terms of sometimes the difference is not in terms of it's not in terms of the flow, but just in terms of yes, I'll share my screen shortly. I'm still just building the story towards our proposal writing, so I will share my screen. So sometimes you find, because somebody would say that the flow you are showing us is very different from what I know. So that is what the disclaimer I'm putting here. The most important thing for this session is for you just to know what goes into what section, the order in which those sections follow might differ among universities. So that is the point. So if you find that I'm now telling you that after a statement of the problem, you go straight to your objectives, and the university says that after statement of the problem, what follows is the justification, I think that should be something you need to go to the university and ask them, kindly provide me with the format that is acceptable at my university. Because now you know that if it's a statement of the problem, this is what I need to write, regardless of where it appears in the proposal, based on the university, you know what goes in that section. So for me, that is the most important thing. And that is what the focus of the day is, the different sections of the proposal. How do we write? How do we write it? And how do we write those different sections, and what goes into them? So basically, that is what will happen today. So I will share my screen. Okay, maybe somebody would want to see just a minute so that you also get to see who is speaking. Sometimes it's put the some people might want to put the face to the voice first, so that before I switch it off, so that it saves on our bandwidth. So this is Nicholas Outa. I had done an introduction, but then I did not switch on my video. So I will switch it off again so that we get to, it saves the bandwidth for everyone. So I will also request that if you're not contributing, you just mute, and also just keep your video off so that it does not distract other people. Thank you. I will switch off my video again. Now, I will share my screen now so that we get to see how to write this proposal. And as I say, no one knows everything. So I'm not here to teach you how to do everything. What I am here to do is to lead a conversation where we are all going to contribute. So at the end of it all, we are going to have all our thoughts put together, and then in a plenary session, we'll be able to discuss all these other things, because I'm also here to learn. I always learn whenever I do these trainings. I always learn something new, and then that helps me in my next training. So I would also really want you to participate very actively in this, so that we get to learn. Mine is to facilitate the discussion, not really to, I can't say that I know every single detail about how to write a proposal. I just know a few tips that I'm going to share with you here. At the end of the day, we all know something that another person does not know. So I will now share my screen, and then we get to start. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay. Now, when we are doing physical trainings, of course, these ones we divide as activities. But now that we are not doing physical training, I would want us to, maybe somebody can unmute and tell us, what is that thing that you consider when you start, writing your research proposal? So let's say you want to start writing a proposal, or you want to come up with a proposal idea. What are those things that you think about? What do you consider? Maybe somebody can unmute so that we start it. Anybody, or you can raise your hand. What do you consider when you want to start writing a research proposal? Anyone wants to try? Yes, Bankole.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I don't know what time is it in your country, but here it is around 7 a.m. Before, when you start your proposal, you think about firstly, understand well your topic. That means do a literature review on your topic, know what people already said about it, set your goals based on that to know what you want to add as a value to to the research, by doing your research. And after that, you set also your methodology. So I think that's for me.
Thank you. So you are saying that you look at what you want to study by doing literature review, and then you decide on the methodology you want to do. Any other person? Yes, I've seen Abdullahi Mohammed.
Good morning, all of the members. My name is Abdul, and I'm from Uganda. For me, I think the first thing that you need to consider before you start proposal is the problem that you are going to solve.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Thank you. So basically, you are saying that before you start writing a proposal, you need to identify that problem that you want to solve, because then that is what informs a proposal. Because for a proposal is you are proposing to do something basically. So you remember, even when you want to, whatever it is that you want to do, you cannot just write and then somebody asks you, what is this proposal about? You just say, okay, I just felt like writing about what really prompted you into writing this. So one of the things that has been said rightly is you need to think about the problem you want to solve. But the other thing is also, you also need to think about so many other things, as we will see, but I'm seeing part of it is, of course, favorite subject of study, academic interest, for example, because there could be something that is interesting to you, or there could be something that is currently a hot topic in your field, and you say, okay, this is a hot topic, and it is something that is really, how do you say, that is really interesting to, in my field of study. So I really want to dig deep and find more about it. So all that is right, but then you want to, this says that you need to research before, so I need to research before I research. Who understands what this kitten is saying? That you need to research before you research. What does that mean? I think somebody, the first person who answered the question already alluded to this. What does it mean when you say you have to research before you research? Anybody? What is your understanding of this? If somebody tells you that, hey, before you do your research, you must do research.
Literature review.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much. That is the most important thing, because how will you even identify what we call research gaps if you have not done literature review? So you must do literature review so that you identify the gaps that are there. And some of the gaps, and yesterday, I had a TikTok live session. Of course, we have a TikTok channel that is called The Simple Academic. So I had a TikTok live session. And yesterday, the topic I was discussing on that TikTok live was about identifying a research gap, how to identify research gaps, and the different types of research gaps. So you need to identify a research gap that will finally inform the problem you're going to write about. But then how do you identify this research gap? You can only identify the research gap by reading literature that is already published out there. Otherwise, you might end up doing something that is either undoable, or it is something that is already over-researched, or something that somebody just conducted a research about maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And then somebody will tell you, hey, I've gone onto the internet and did you see this paper that was done by so and so? This paper was just published the other day, and it has every single thing like that you want to study. So your study is invalid. It really does not fill in any gap. So you need to do a lot of research before you conduct your own research. So That is why when you graduate, and just in the Kenyan context, the VC tells you that they give you the power to read and to write all that pertains to the degree. It means that they appreciate the fact that before you write, you must read. So you can only read if you can be able to access these papers and be able to read and summarize them. So we will talk about where to get this from. So I will show you, certain platforms where you can get papers from and some tools that can help you read and summarize your papers. But then that is for another day. But the most important thing that I want to pass this slide is that you should be able to read as much as possible, conduct a lot of literature search and literature review so that you can be able to understand where the gaps are, so that you can be able to formulate your problem statement or your research idea around those gaps. Then how then do you select a research topic? And again, I want to have a bit of a challenge here that I always tell students. Sometimes a student comes and tells you, hey, Nicholas, I want you to help me decide on a topic, on my research topic or research title. That is a very minimalistic way of looking at research. At the point when you are looking at what to do a research on, don't go around looking for the research topic. Go around looking for the research idea. Because if you're looking for a topic, then you are just looking for certain words. You are trying to put together a certain sentences or a certain sentence so that you can do a research around it. So then it also limits your thinking, because you're thinking of how then can I craft a very good sentence to put as the title of my proposal. A very simplistic way of looking at research. The way you need to look at research is you need to think about concepts, and you also need to think about ideas. So think about this research as ideas, not as titles. So you need to think about, I want to do a research on a specific idea or around a certain idea, not around a certain topic. The topic will come later once the idea is, the concept is very clear. And we'll talk about concept mapping. How do you formulate your concepts before you even get down to write your proposal? So the take-home message here is that when you want to do your research or when you want to start writing your proposal, don't think about the title at the beginning. Think about the idea or the concept, because then that widens your scope and it widens your thinking. And then you will settle on a topic later on. Let us say you want to do something in the field of fisheries and aquaculture. That is my background. So you want to look at, so you can say, okay, the idea I want to talk about is about the use of black soldier fly in the formulation of fish feeds. Now, you already have an idea. Or if you want to do something and you say, okay, I want to look at the effects of financial deepening, for example, on the performance of SMEs in Ghana, for example. So you have an idea. You might not really even have the topic. It could be, so it's just a concept. So once you know the concept around which you want to formulate your research, it's very easy for you there now to think about a title. Then you can say, okay, I want to look at, to talk about financial deepening and how this influences the performance or the growth of SMEs in Ghana or SMEs in Kakuma, for example, Kakuma City, or let's say on Nairobi City, for example. Now, you have an idea, you have a concept around which you want to formulate your research. Now, you can now go down and look for a very good title that will help you formulate your objectives. But if you want to think about, okay, I'm through with my coursework, I want to get into the field and start my proposal, but I don't know the title. I'm looking for a research title, or I'm looking for a topic. It will be very difficult for you to come up with a good topic. Now, here is how to select a research topic. But then, what are those things that you need to think about when selecting a research topic? Again, this recording and this presentation will be shared, so you really don't need to think about grasping all this in one go. You can have another go at it once the recording is shared. Now, one is you need to know all the requirements. I'm just reading randomly. There's no any other way. But then I want to think about the first one is you need to aim. The aim is to solve a genuine contextual problem. And that is why we need to identify the research gap from the beginning. We need to identify what is this problem that I want to solve. Okay? Now, if it is not going to solve a genuine contextual problem, then it becomes a very difficult thing for you to convince your supervisor or your professor. He will tell you that I've read through your title or I've read through your proposal. I really don't see the problem you're solving. Or I'm not seeing the research gap that you are filling. So then, it will be very difficult for you to be able to convince this person that your research is important. So think about, and that's why I was talking to you about not thinking about a topic, but thinking about a concept or thinking about a research idea. So it needs to, the aim is to solve a genuine contextual problem. Then you need to align it with current trends and hot topics in your field. If you're alive to what is happening in your field, at any given time, you always know what is that thing that is trending. So you need to think about a current trend or a hot topic that if you tell your supervisor, they will easily identify to it and tell you, indeed, that is what most people are talking about right now. So go for it. So these are some of the things. Then it has also to be relevant to your field of study, okay? You cannot just tell me that you want to do something about finances and you're in the field of maybe medicine, and you cannot convince me how you are linking these two. So it has to be relevant. Then you also need to know all the requirements. It should not be too broad, and that is why we were talking about when we get into a point where we are going to develop our objectives, you need to be very clear on what you want to do, because if it's just a very broad topic, then it becomes very difficult for you, okay? Then the other part of it could also include that it should spark your interest. So if you want to do something, you need to be passionate about what you want. There could be a lot of trending topics in your field, but then you say, I'm not really into genetics. So even if this is what is trending right now in my field, I'm not really going into genetics because that is not my area of interest. I mean, my interest is in maybe fish feeding behavior. So that's why I'm going for the feeding behavior instead of this other. So it really needs to be something you are also interested in. Okay, it should be relevant to the supervisor's field of study. And I'm saying this with a bit of caution because sometimes you go to, there are two things. There are universities where you write your proposal and then you are allocated a supervisor based on whatever you want to study. So the faculty will check through your topic or your title and your proposal or your concept. And then they will tell you, okay, based on whatever you want to study, the best person to guide you is so and so. So you are allocated a supervisor after you already given your concept. But the universities where you are allocated supervisors and then the supervisors are the ones who are going to guide you on what to do, which for me is not a very good thing because they might end up guiding you into something you're not interested in. So there are universities that will tell you, we don't know what you're interested in, so you already have done your coursework, you understand all these aspects, so come up with a concept so that based on that concept, we can be able to advise you and pair you with the best possible supervisor. Okay, so when that happens, you know why it has to be relevant to your supervisor's field of study, because that is the only way they can be able to guide you. If you are going to do something and then your supervisors are not really competent in your field of research, then it's difficult for them to help you because they don't understand the nitty-gritties of how to offer that help. So you might end up spending a lot of time because there's quite a lot of back and forth. They don't know how to guide you. So, and plus many other things as you will, look at this. Now, at the proposal preparation stage, when you are still preparing yourself to start your research or start writing your proposal, there are several questions that you need to ask yourself and some steps that you need to take in tackling those questions. And there are elements of that step. I'm not going to read all of them because, as I say, this recording is going to be shared, so you can also again, and also the presentation, so you can also again go through them again. But one of the most important questions that you need to ask yourself is, what is the problem? Okay, I think we said this. Before you do anything, you need to ask yourself, what is the problem? Why should it be studied? Now, once you ask yourself these questions, then you need to select selection and statement of the problem. So that is the step that is taken. But then what you need to do is you need to identify the problem. So that is problem identification, then problem prioritization, and then justification for why that study is important. Okay. The next thing you need to ask yourself is about what information is already available. Remember in the beginning, we were saying that you need to do research before you do research. So you need to research before you start your own research. So this is what we are talking about. How will you identify the knowledge gaps? By trying to read, by doing literature review, to identify the information that is already there so that you know what is not there that your research is going to bring to the table. So that is one question you need to ask yourself. What information is already available? Okay. Then why do you want to do that research? Okay, so that is the why. Why is it important for you to do this kind of research? How do you carry out this research? So this is about the methodology. So we now talked about the what, the why, the how. So the how is the methodology. So how do you want to collect your data? Where from? To collect data and information and all these things. So these are some of the questions plus more. These plus more are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself. Who will collect the data and when? Who will be? How will this be monitored? The research findings, how will they be used? How much resources do you need? Who will submit? Submit to whom? Where to submit? All these things. And this is also true not only for academic proposals, but also for grant proposals. So these are things you need to ask yourself. Now, I think part of this is what we've already been talking about. We'll get to a point where we are going to see how to write the different parts of the proposal. Don't worry, we are going there. We are still developing the first few parts of it, so that because we are moving towards writing our proposal, but then there are a few things there are a few steps we need to get out of first before we get into the actual writing. That is what I'm still doing, just building the story towards our writing. Now, this is now where we are now planning on writing a proposal. And I think we've talked about so many of these aspects, so I'll just go through them again. So step one is knowing and analyzing the problem. So this is achieved by analyzing the prevailing situation. It enables formulation of problem statement, the use of a problem tree. I will show you how to use a problem tree as a guide to writing a statement of the problem. Now, you need to know and analyze the problem. It's not just about knowing the problem. Knowing the problem is the first step. The second step, after knowing the problem, you need to go one step further and analyze that problem, because that is the only way you can be able to write what we call the statement of the problem. If you're not able to analyze the problem and know the root causes, the consequences of this problem, then it's difficult for you to be able to write a comprehensive statement of the problem section of your research, because you have not analyzed the problem. You just know that most SMEs do not go beyond 3 years. So most SMEs in Kenya, for example, most SMEs in a certain part of your country, or in Addis Ababa, just as an example, fail within the first 2 years of their most startups fail within the first 3 years of their inception, for example. So that is the problem, you know. So you need to analyze by reading and to know what are some of the problems that have been cited for the cause of this. So that analysis will help you understand how now to bring it out to us so that we really get to understand your problem better. But if you just identify the problem and stop at that, then you are only going to tell us about the problem, but then it will be difficult for us to understand how that problem is important and why it is important to study it. So you need to, the first step is to know the problem and going a step further and analyzing that problem, because that is the only way through which you can be able to write your statement of the problem, as we will see. Now, this one is the example of a statement of the problem, as I talked about. So you have the problem in the middle, which is now the core of this. So in the middle, you have the problem in the trunk of the tree. Then the roots are the causes of this problem. You remember, even in normal conversations, talk about, I want to know the root cause. So the roots are the causes of that problem, and then the branches are the consequences. Because of this problem, these are the consequences of this problem. This will help you write the statement of the problem, because then you have the problem in the middle. So let's say the problem is the failure of these SMEs, small and medium business enterprises, at the beginning. So let's say for the the problem you have seen is that there's a problem with the success or maturity of these SMEs. Now you need to go back and ask yourself from literature, what are the causes of this failure? Okay, and what are the consequences of this failure? Once you identify that, and you can draw it in this way, when you draw it in this format, and for me, I always just draw it out on a piece of paper at the beginning, at the conceptualization level. So I always put the problem in the middle, and then I look at what is causing this problem. So you can see that, for example, the one that is here is that teenagers do not finish school. So that is the core problem, in the trunk of the tree. Now, what are the causes or the root causes of this? Parents do not encourage them. School is not interesting to them. There's need to find employment to support family. So you can link up all this. And what I always tell people, when you're using this, the problem tree to develop your statement of the problem section of your proposal, you need to be able to link up all the potential causes of this and then link them up until you have the sub-problem, the sub-causes, the sub-roots. Now, once you draw this even on a piece of paper, because the consequences up there or the effects of this problem will help you write your justification on the relevance of your study or significance of your study. But then the root causes are what is going to help you narrate your statement of the problem. Because in the statement of the problem section, you are not going to justify why you need this study. In the statement of the problem section, and this is one problem that most students or most researchers struggle with, you find that someone is trying to write the statement of the problem, but then they are in that section, they are trying to justify why it is important for them to do this kind of study. I always discourage that. In your statement of the problem section, just narrate the problem as is. Okay, don't try to go ahead because there's a specific section, whether it is the significance of the study or the justification of the study, because depending on, as I told you, different universities have different formats on how these things are written. But the training today is just for you to know what goes into what section. So the order in which they follow, that now depends on your faculty, and you can always ask them. But then here I'm talking about using the problem tree to help you conceptualize your statement of the problem. Because what happens is, if you don't analyze your problem, you could know the problem, yes, but if you don't analyze to know the root causes of the problem and the consequences of that problem, writing a statement of the problem section will be very difficult, because you might end up now getting tempted to start writing about the justification of your study. If you use this, and I'm just using this as an example, that this is the problem tree I'm using. Now, in the middle of it is the problem, the core problem, which is teenagers do not finish school. So that is the problem I want to research or I want to implement my proposal around, write my proposal around. Then I need to ask myself, why do teenagers not finish school? So what are the causes of this? Because when you are narrating the statement of the problem, these are some of the things you are going to write, so that because they are also the sub-problems. So this is why without them, then the problem maybe could not have been there. Or if you deal with them, then the problem will go away, hopefully. And then the consequences, just the branches above the core problem, the effects or the branches of the tree are the consequences of that problem. And that is what is going to now help you justify your study. You need to say that I'm going to do my study, so my study will generate information that can now help solve the consequences of the problem that we are talking about. So I always encourage people that, for me, I always just draw it out on a piece of paper, and then I link all those boxes. And then I will, once it is clear that this is linked to this, this is what is causing this, once it is all linked up, it's easy for me now to start now doing the narration. But if you want to start doing the narration without linking all of them, you might end up finding that the connection between all these causes, sometimes it's not very coherent, or maybe it's not very clear, because they are all, maybe they could all be in your head, but because you've not conceptualized them down on a piece of paper or maybe out drawn somewhere, the linkages become sometimes very difficult. So I find students sometimes finding it difficult to really narrate their statement of the problem section very well. Now, the other example that I have here is, now, in this case now, the core problem is that there's rice productivity is low. Now, you remember when I was talking about coming up with when you are thinking about your research idea, as I told you, it's not about, do not start by struggling about the topic. When you start struggling that I want to get the right topic or get the right words for my title right now, you will struggle a lot, and you might end up, even just giving up. I cannot find the title of my research. What you need to think about is the problem and then the idea around which you want to do your research. After that, things will just fall into place. Now, in this case, the core problem is that rice production is low. So then we need to look at what are the causes of this problem, or what are the root causes of this problem. So once you write all this, once you link it up like this, it's very easy for you now to do a narration. You can easily say that one of the, the problem that that the country is facing is there is very limited arable land, and irrigation systems also do not work properly. And why are irrigation systems not working properly? The main facilities are not well maintained, or the terminal facilities are not well maintained. And then the other problem that we are seeing, or the other cause to this low production, is traditional farming methods that are being used. Now, why are traditional farm methods being used? So you remember now, once you conceptualize this in this kind of format, it's very easy for you now to start writing it down in form of text, so that you can be able to write out your statement of the problem section. Now, the first thing we talked about was about identifying and analyzing the problem. The second step is concept mapping. And I think this is something I talked about, in the formative stages of this presentation, that you need to start from the main ideas I said, or concept or problem, then branch out to show how that main idea can be broken down into specific topics. Now, let us say you want to work something on climate change. Okay, now climate change is a big, broad thing that you cannot tell me. If somebody asks you what your research is about, and then you tell them, okay, I want to do research on climate change, then somebody will be lost. What specific aspect of climate change do you want to work on? So those things. Now, if you want to work on something around climate change, these are the few questions you need to ask yourself about. Now, the questions that you need to ask yourself are what, why, who, where, and also there's the question of how. I think we talked about the how somewhere, but I'll explain it here. Now, the problem is climate change. So the what is, what aspects of climate change you want to work on? Okay? The why is this problem that you want to work on important? So these are the questions you need to ask yourself at the point of concept mapping. You are mapping your ideas. You have the problem identified, but then you want to map the specific aspects of this problem that you want to focus on. Okay? So you need to ask yourself, we've talked about asking yourself what you want to do, what specific aspects of this problem you want to do. So I want to look at the impacts of climate change, for example, on crop yield, or the impacts of this on rainfall patterns, for example. So that is the what aspect. Then the why is it important for you to do this kind of study? The who is who will be involved, or who will be affected, or who will be part of this study, for example. Then where do you want to do this study? And then the how is the methodology you want to, or the approach you want to give it. So these are some of the things that you need to ask yourself. I think I've talked about the 4 W's, and of course there's the H, which is the how. Now, the first thing that I always tell people is, when you are writing, after you have identified, conceptualized, and even mapped out your problem, the next thing is you need to write down your master's or your PhD story. And I will explain. Sometimes when you meet people, they will always ask you, what is your research about? Somebody will ask you, you are doing a PhD. I heard you are doing a PhD. What is your research about? You really need to write a very simple sentence, or a very simple story that narrates what your study is about. Now, write it out in very simple and plain language. Okay? Write it out. Write out what you want to do. Make it as clear as possible, first to yourself. Okay? So make it first very clear to yourself. If somebody asks you what your research is about, you really should not be telling them stories for 3 years, or telling them stories for 1 hour. Just need to tell them, hey, my research is focusing on this and this because of this and that, and I want to do it in this specific area, or I want to use this methodology to do it. It should be a very short sentence, but one that speaks to whatever you want to study, but then make it simple first before you start complicating it. Now, what would be your answer to what are you researching on, for example, if somebody asks you that? So you need to write your story. And sometimes I always tell people, for your master's or even PhD, you can write your main story, which is the main research you are going to do, and then write for each objective, write its own story. Because we are going to collect data. So you have like 3 objectives or 4 objectives, for example. Now, each objective should be a story on its own. So you need to, after writing your general story for your master's or PhD, you need to go ahead and write your mini stories for each of the specific objectives that you are going to study. Okay? So that when you are collecting data, you keep probing and asking yourself, is the data I'm collecting, is it really going to help me tell the story that I wanted to tell for this objective. So you have objective one. Write a story, a very short story around objective one. What story would you want to narrate? What are you trying to, what information are you trying to pass in that objective? So that when you collect data, you are sure that the data sets you are collecting will help you tell the story that you had written. I hope that is clear. Write your general story for your master's or PhD or your thesis story. And then write mini stories for each objective and make them very simple. You know, objective one, this is the story I want to tell. Objective two, this is the story I want to tell. Why am I telling you to write sub-stories for your specific objectives? You know, when you are going for conferences and sometimes you are invited to conferences and you want to go and present, you will, sometimes in most conferences, you are not going to present your whole PhD, or you are not going to present all the data in your master's. Whatever you're going to present could be maybe a specific objective that is relevant to that specific conference. So if you already have a story, then you can decide, okay, I've seen a call on this conference or this webinar or this seminar that I want to attend. The story I'm going to take there, or the story they want, only resonates with this specific objective. So this is the story I'm taking there. So if you had written this story at the beginning, at the time when you're collecting your data, then this story is already synthesized enough and it's very clear for you to. Magdalene Nakiyingi, kindly just switch off your video. It's a bit distracting to maybe the people who are following. I'm just requesting. Thank you. So for those who are you're going for a conference or you're going for a seminar, it would be a good thing for you to write your stories around your specific objectives. I have passed that already. Now, sometimes when you are writing maybe you are writing a grant proposal, then you need to identify the funding source. So determine where the sources for your project is coming from. Now, this is also true for academic proposals. You are writing a very big proposal. You want to go out there, collect data, perform certain kind of experiments. It means that this will require money. So even as you write your proposal, you need to think about that if I'm selecting this kind of methodology or I'm selecting this kind of research, where is the money coming from? Will I get the resources, or where do I get the resources to collect the data that I want? What happens in some cases, you find students are attached to projects so that they can be able to collect data, because sometimes data collection becomes a bit expensive. So you are attached to a project. Now, if you are attached to a project, you have to align to the objectives of that project, because most projects already have their own objectives. So you are going to, when you are writing a proposal and a project tells you that, hey, a professor tells you, I have a project that I'm currently running, and I wanted you to be my student in that project. Ask them what the objectives are. So in fact, they will send you the proposal, the project proposal, so that you get to understand how then can you plug in the objectives of the proposal. Okay, so think about that as you write your concepts, or as you write your objectives, so that they feel like you're also going to help them answer the objectives of their project. Okay. Now, why do we write a research proposal? One is it helps you clarify your ideas. It helps you in your planning. It also helps you develop writing skills, because when you write a proposal, you already start writing other parts of your thesis or of your manuscript. So it's part of it. And then you can also, through a proposal, you communicate your proposed research to get advice. You know, it's very easy for somebody to guide you when you have a document, rather than when you go to your professor and tell them that, okay, professor, I'm thinking of writing a proposal on this. They will tell you, go and come up with a concept, so that we can be able I can be able to guide you, or we can be able to discuss. So what you need to do is just start writing, you know, so that somebody can be able to guide you and tell you, okay, you've written this way. I really don't think this fits. You know, you've written this way. You need to add this. You need to add this. You need to remove this. So it helps you. That is part of what it does, and that is why the proposal stage becomes slightly more difficult than the thesis stage, because especially in terms of writing, because at the proposal stage is where you are still proposing an idea to be accepted. Now, for you to convince these people that this idea is researchable, it is worth, you know, going out to the field for, it is worth collecting data for, it means that it has to be you shall have done quite a lot of work around it. But once it is accepted and we are told, okay, the idea has been accepted, you can already go to the field, then now you really don't have a lot of problems because the idea is already accepted. So the proposal part becomes very difficult, okay? Those are not the ones I want to talk about. Now, when somebody is reading your proposal, what do you think a reader is looking for in your proposal? Let's say I have been given your proposal as a reviewer to look at your proposal. What do you think are those things I look for in your proposal to say whether it is something that I can, I can give a pass, or one that I can tell you, this one, no. Kindly, maybe you can unmute and tell me or raise your hand. What is your reader looking for in your proposal? Somebody?
I think a reader, can I go on?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think the reader wants first to know the problem we are trying to solve, and how the problem we are trying to solve and how we want to solve it. I mean, I think that's it.
So the reader is interested in what is that problem that this proposal, or the person writing this proposal is trying to solve, and how they want to solve it. Have they explained the exact methodologies and the ways they want to do it? Any other person, what is your reader looking for?
Can I try, bro?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, first one, I think it is looking for the reader. One is a statement problem. Another one is the tool. Can you use it to solve that problem? And also you're looking for the analysis and also recommendation of that proposal. I think in that area is this.
Okay, so which tools do you have? So let's say maybe you are going to collect data using certain data collection tools. Do you have the right tools, or do you have the right procedures to collect the data? You've talked about the statement of the problem. Is the statement of the problem very clear, so that I don't really go around asking a lot of questions? So thank you for that. And you can also put something in the chat so that we also get, there are other things that people also look at. So if any of them has not been captured by the two people who have answered, then you can write it in the chat. Those, whatever you've said is true. Let me just add a few of them, a few other things. Now, so one is significance of your proposal. I think that is what has been said already. Then the other one is feasibility. The proposal must convince the reader that the research is valuable and is realistic and achievable. Okay. So while assessing or reading the proposal, the reader asks a series of questions that your proposal must provide answers to. So the questions they ask themselves is, you've presented a problem. Is the problem worth studying? Or how important is this? How important is this issue? And that is why we're talking about mapping out your problem, identifying the problem and analyzing it. Are the objectives or research questions clearly stated? So if the objectives are not very clear, or if they're not specific enough, then the reader will, or the reviewer, for example, will tell you that, hey, I really don't think you really have figured out what you want to do, okay? What contribution to knowledge of the issue will the study make? You have a research gap that you have identified. You've told us there's a knowledge gap, for example. What contribution is your study going to make? So if your study is not going to make any contribution, if you are just talking about what every person has done, then you will be Abdullah.
Sorry for disturbance. Can you please briefly explain what research gap means?
Okay, I think you joined late. We talked about this, but I'll just say it in a word, in a sentence. A research gap is what is that thing that is still lacking in your field that you want to study and provide information about. That is the gap that is there. So what has been done before, as I was saying, you read through literature in your field and find this is what has been done, but this is what is still lacking. So that is the research gap. What has not been studied or what is still lacking in terms of research information that you want to provide. Now, the other thing is that is what we are talking about, the contribution to knowledge. So if what is that new thing that your research is bringing in? If for the award of a degree, will the expected research outcome meet the requirements of the degree? So if somebody is doing a proposal or is reviewing a proposal and maybe you are, this proposal is for the award of a degree, maybe you are presenting it to be awarded a degree or a master's degree or a postgraduate degree, a master's or a PhD degree, for example. One of the things they will also look at is, I'm looking at the kind of data, or I'm looking at the proposed outcome. Are they really sufficient enough for the award of a degree? Okay. The other question that they ask themselves, has the researcher thoroughly reviewed documented literature and used it to justify the research? So you need to demonstrate to whoever is reading your research or whoever is reviewing it that you have thoroughly reviewed documented literature and used it to justify the research. This is why we were saying that before you start your research, you need to do a lot of reading so that you get to, understand what really has been done in your field, because that is the only way you can know what has not been done. Now, are the proposed materials and methods appropriate for the study? Your methodology section is also very important because that is how, this is where you are narrating how you are going to develop how you are going to collect data, how you are going to conduct your study. So that is very important. So that is one of those things that whoever is reviewing your work is also looking at. Does the researcher have the necessary skills to complete the study successfully? Sometimes you want to do a certain kind of research and your supervisor or whoever is reviewing your work, you are in the field of medicine, but then you want to do something in the field of business, but there are maybe certain kind of models that you want to run that maybe you don't understand. So that is one question that will also be asked. Are the required resources available? Budget, materials, and supervision. So whoever is reviewing this work can also look at, you want to do DNA analysis and sequencing, and then you want to do it in a laboratory, for example, in somewhere where those gadgets and those resources are not there. There is a reviewer will tell you that, fine, you have a good idea, but then I'm not convinced that you will be able to, like, you have the right resources that are required for this kind of undertaking, okay? Have potential risks been identified and managed? Is the timeline feasible? So these are the questions that they ask themselves. I think we've talked about this, the three key elements: what you intend to study, why you intend to study it, and how you intend to do it. The exact format varies amongst faculties and schools. I think I talked about this. Your school or your university or your faculty will provide specific guidelines on how your proposal should be formatted. So if I tell you here, if I follow a certain format and then you tell me that is not what my university tells me, that is not a problem, because that is the disclaimer I gave at the beginning. Whatever we are doing here is just knowing what goes into that specific part. The order in which those sections follow depends on the university. I've seen universities where, after writing the statement of the problem, you follow with the justification and maybe sometimes even the significance before you go into your objectives. I've seen universities where, after the statement of the problem, you go to the objectives and then you write the justification after that. I've seen universities where you only write the justification and you don't write the significance of study. I've seen universities where you only write the significance of study and not the justification. So the format and the formula is different from the different universities. So I really don't want somebody to go and tell the supervisor that, hey, we were trained and we were told that is the order in which those sections follow one another. That is not what I want you to go ahead and say. I just ask your university, tell them, I want to write my proposal, but I need guidance on how my proposal should be formatted. Then that will help you. Now, these are the components of a proposal, but then we will tackle most of them, maybe if not all. So we have the title, we have the introduction. So chapter 1 is the introduction. The introductory part of your research carries so many things. And part of what the introductory part of your research carries the extent of the problem, the rationale, the justification of significance of the research, significance of the research, the scope and limitations of the study. Then chapter 2 mostly, of course, starts with the review of literature review. And then the objectives mostly, the objectives, the operational definition of terms used, the hypothesis, these ones mostly come in chapter 1 in the first part of your research. Then, of course, I think there's a problem here. So the first chapter is where you have all that. Then chapter 2 is where we have the review of literature, so literature review. And then chapter 3 is where we now have the methodology, and then the methodology or materials and methods, depending on your field or their approach, the study approach. And then the other parts will follow in that order. We will see how they follow. But then the other thing I also have told you, and I'm stressing, go and ask your university to give you the guidelines on how this is done. We are now writing the proposal, okay? We have gone through the preliminary parts of, we were just building a story. Now, this is where we now start writing our proposal, okay? Now, if anybody has a comment or a question before we now get down to writing the different parts of the proposal, maybe we can have it here. We have a few minutes to just deliberate. If somebody has a comment or a question, so that they can, I don't want to point out people, but I saw there's one person I would also want to give just some general remarks before we go to the next. Dr. Janet Fisher, I hope I called your name, I pronounced your name correctly. Is there anything you might need to add? It might not be a question, it could just be a general term. As I said, here we are here to discuss and also learn from one another. What could be your general advice? We are now going into we will start writing now the proposal from the title to the end, but then, okay, kindly mute if you are not contributing. Dr. Gennett, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Fiseha. Maybe anything, just a general thing to add before we now get into the writing. It may be a question, but not a question. Maybe just a general word that you can give us before we go ahead. Okay, maybe she's not in a position to speak at this time. I would really want, maybe if somebody has something to add, not a question at this point. I just want somebody to, maybe just something general to add as we proceed now to start writing the proposal. The first part was just general discussion about how to pick.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. Oh.
Yes.
You are hearing me, yeah?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly.
Yeah, what I want to add here is that when you are selecting the title, whether it is an applied research or whether it's a basic research, the main point is that the intention, what you want to do or what you want to find out. So it starts from the selection of the title. Yeah, and then our objective should be in line with our title. And when we go to the next, and the introduction will tell us the background of the research, whether it is applied or basic research. And as a statement of the problem, we have to show the gap or the problem, or if it's a basic research, whether the concept or the idea we want to find out. And in the literature review, we have also to support the gap based upon literatures and some researches which are done before. And in the methodology part, it should have to be in line with our objective. It should have to be continuous. The flow up should be continues from the title up to the method. So in our finding or in our writing a scientific research, the main thing or the main work there is the assessment of the problem, because that's where the readers focus. That's where we convince our readers or our evaluators, if it's in some project or something else. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gennett, for that addition. I really wanted another voice to add that. And I think what you have done is you have summarized like everything for me already. So I'll just give a bit of more, because you have summarized from the title. And I think one of the things that I want to, Jafet, just a minute, one of the things I want to also, just as you have said, is the statement of the problem. It has to be, you really need to convince us, because then we have to see the problem. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to convince us that that is something that is worth studying. I think there's also another thing that you have said, I mean, we even talked about the literature review section, where you are saying that literature review is not just about summarizing what other people did. You need to use it to support the gap. You remember you've said you need to use now literature review section now to support this gap, that the gap that I identified from literature, this is how now I can support that, hey, this is what has been done, but then this is what is still lacking. So thank you. I think you've summarized everything. So even as we go through the discussion, you've given a very good summary. And thank you so much for finding time to join. And, you know, it's always a pleasure to have you for, you know, this kind of forum. Yes, Jafet Noel.
Yeah,
yes,
thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, you have me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I agree with your interesting ideas and the contribution from the previous speaker. Yeah, quite often looking for the gap or expressing the gap is at times not easy, but I wanted to share the aspects that can assist you when you're trying to identify and communicate the gap. Yeah, some literature gives us things like the context, the method, the knowledge, and the theory. So if you are trying to explore and exhaust the gaps, if you can use those, you see what are the methodological gaps for this research program or for this study. What are the theoretical gaps? What are the contextual gaps? And what's the knowledge gap? It might be quite easier for you. And this is more common for academic studies. Maybe if you're doing a PhD or a master's, I think these concepts can help you in regard to your program. My name is Noel Jeffers, and I'm the member of International Center for Higher Education Research at the University of Kassel, Germany. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Noel. And I think I could not have put it better. Thank you so much, because you have now gone ahead to tell us that, because it's true that, you know, just teasing out the knowledge gap is a big problem for many researchers, and especially when we are getting to do our masters. For PhD, some of them we already have a bit of some experience, but at master's level, people struggle so much. How do I identify what we call the gap? So we've talked about the conceptual gap, for example, logical, theoretical gap. So when you are reading through your literature, one of the things you can look at is sometimes we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is there. Sometimes it's just about modifying the wheel. So I think when we talk about this research, somebody might think it's a really big thing that you really have to go out there and, you know, formulate a very big thing. Let me give you an example. A study has been done among a certain population, for example, and you say, okay, my study is now going to focus on adolescents, or my study is going to focus on lactating mothers, or my study is going to focus on people with disability. You can easily convince us that, hey, I have read through literature, but the literature I'm finding is just about maybe expectant mothers, but I've not seen really conclusive literature on this specific topic, on this specific kind of population. That could be a very good research gap. So you really don't think that it's really hard to be something that is out of this world. It could be something very simple, but just convince us that, hey, whatever I'm going to do is unique in the way that what has been done has focused on A, B, C, D. And the methodological gap that he's talking about is these are the methodologies, reading through literature, I've found that these are the methodologies that have been applied by other people, but then I think they are either outdated or they have this weakness, and that is the weakness I want to reinforce by applying this new methodology. So my methodology makes my study unique. So those are some of the areas you need to look at. I'm seeing Alison Alex Tongu. Maybe you can also contribute before we move forward now.
Yeah, thank you, the host and the colleagues.
Yes.
My name is Tongu Alison Alex. I'm a PhD student from Uganda Matters University, still in first year. I'm still constituting actually chapter 1 of my study. But what I wanted to know and get clarification on is under the problem of study. In most cases, we find that some supervisors or some researchers tell you that when stating the problem of the study, you begin with the problem itself, and then you look at the why. When that there is a problem, what should be done, and what contribution should the study give to the world of academics or to the area you are studying on. And then some people will say you need to give a brief background of the topic of study or the problem. Then you state the problems clearly, and then you give the so what. Now that there's a problem, what next? What should be done? Or what should the study do? What is the study going to do? And then finally, you give the contribution of your study to the area of research or to the world of, to academia. So now, what I don't know is which format do we follow? What do we begin from, and where do we stop? Thank you.
Whatever answers you get from here, I want you to treat them as opinions, because in research and in academia, I really don't think there is one way of doing things, and that's why everybody has their own opinion. So whatever we are going to give you today, I'm not telling you that you go and tell your supervisors, no, I was told this is what is done. So I will respond to it, and maybe any other person will also respond to it, but I want to hear from Julien, and then we can respond to it. I've noted it down so I can be able to respond, but then I want to hear from Julien so that we can tackle them one. So maybe it could just be a contribution. Yes, Julien. Yes, Julien. Hello, I see your hand is up. You want to contribute? Okay, I'll assume that maybe you are not hearing. Okay, when stating the statement of the problem, my advice for people is always that you give the context of the problem. You state the problem. That is where it starts. So in the statement of the problem section is where you are stating the problem. What is the problem? And you remember when I was talking about the problem tree, you have it in the middle, and then in your narration, you need to narrate what is causing this problem. There's pollution in Lake Victoria. That is the problem. Okay. Now, what is causing this problem? Whatever is causing this problem is then pollution, all these things people discharging waste into this, agricultural activities that are not planned in the catchment, and all these things. So what is contributing to this problem? So in the statement of the problem, after mentioning the problem, you need to also tell us what is causing this problem. So you need to narrate all that. This is what is causing the problem. This is what is linked to this, and this is what is linked to this. And then you need to tell us the consequences of the problem. How dire is the situation? Now, what problems are this problem causing? I don't know whether that is clear, but then we have a problem in the middle. You narrate all that is causing the problem and what is the result of this problem. For me, I always tell people that my advice is that you stop there, because the justification of what you will do and why your study is important in solving this problem is in the justification of the significance of the study section. If you mix it here, most researchers will tell you, or most readers will tell you that for me, I always tell people, this is a section where you just narrate the problem and stop it at that. Then you go to your justification, and now you say that this is why I've narrated the problem up there. But then I want to now convince you why this study is important, because it is going to generate information that is information on A, B, C, D now based on your objectives, that is really going to help solve the problems A, B, C, D. And this is how my problem is, my study seeks to solve that problem. We will come back to that, but for me, that is the advice I always give people. So we will come back to it, but I always, my suggestion is, in the statement of the problem section, just talk about the problem, the root causes of that problem, the consequences of the problem, and then leave it there. Then go to your justification and now start convincing us how your study is going to contribute to solving that problem. Or go to your, because there's a very slight difference between the significance of study and the justification of the study. Okay, they might sound almost the same, semantically, but whatever it is, there is a very slight difference. I will explain it in a few, but there's a very slight difference. So in the statement of the problem section, my suggestion is just state the problem and stop it there. Then go to the justification and then now tell us how your study seeks to solve that problem. I can see Julien, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing your name rightly. Niyubuhungiro. Okay. Your hand has been up, so I'm really concerned whether you want to contribute or because I've given you a chance. I don't know. I don't want to move ahead before you contribute. Hello, Julien. Okay, I will move ahead. I had thought your hand has been up, so I have thought you wanted to contribute. But anyway, let's move ahead. Now, we are now starting to write our proposal, and we will start with the title. Automatically, of course, we start with the title. Now, the title is a mini abstract of your investigation. Now, you need to paint a quick picture of the key ideas, okay? And the words should reflect the focus of your proposal. You make sure you put the most important words first. So you try by putting the most important words towards the beginning of your title, so that I don't go around looking for it towards the end, trying to figure out what is that thing that this person wants to study. Yes, Ahmed Wopa.
Yes, good morning, sir, from my end. Thank you so much for the presentation. I just want to ask, because some scholars will tell you the problem statement should not be 1 page or should be half a page. So I want to know if it has a word limit.
It does not have a word limit, but my advice, if it goes beyond 3/4 of a page, then you are not very clear about your problem. So you are still trying to figure out what the problem is. I always tell people, if it goes beyond 3/4 of a page, some universities will tell you they want it longer, but in my university, for example, if it goes beyond 3/4 of a page, the professor will tell you, Nicholas, you really don't, you are still not clear on your problem. That's why you cannot state it in very few words. That's why you are writing a page or 2 pages trying to narrate the problem. If you have figured out the problem, I should find it just like that. So try and minimize it and try to write it in less than 1 page. That is the advice. But I really don't think it has word limits. So universities are different. But if you have a problem that is clearly mapped out, it should be in 3/4 of a page. It should never go beyond 1 page. Now, I have talked about the title, that it is a mini abstract of your investigation. You need to paint a quick picture of the key ideas. The keywords the words should reflect the focus of your proposal, and then you need to put the most important words towards the beginning of your title. Okay? So the variables that you are going to investigate should appear very clearly in your title so that you know what you are investigating. Okay? Let me just show the next one here. Now, you see these 2 titles. If you read them, they might sound like they are talking about the same thing, but ideally, the focus is different, okay? So the first title is Left-handedness in Students and its Relationship to Learning Preferences. The second one is Learning Preferences in Students and the Connection to Left-handedness. Now, the first title, the focus is left-handedness. And in the second title, the focus is on learning preferences. And that is why I'm telling you that you need to put the most important words towards the beginning. Okay, so that when I'm reading your proposal or your title, I know what your focus is on. The first and the second one, even in terms of data analysis, the data collection, there could be a little bit of differences. So the first one, we are looking at left-handed in students and its relationship to learning preferences. Now, in the first one, the focus is left-handed. It means that we are looking for students who are left-handed, and then we are looking at their learning preferences so that we see whether there's a link between left-handedness and. In the second one, we are asking students, what are your learning preferences? And then we try to ask them whether they are left-handed or not. Okay? So in the first one, we are focusing on left-handedness and then linking it to learning preferences. In the second one, we are focusing on learning preferences and linking it to left-handedness. Now, that is where sometimes we formulate titles and then somebody is not very sure where your focus is on. So make sure that in your title, you have the most important, your focus should come towards the beginning of the title, so that I don't go around looking for it at the end, and then I assume that it might not be your focus. So make sure that the most important words comes towards the beginning. Now, in order to develop a clear title, you must be clear about the focus of your research. I think I'm not going to say that again because I've stressed more than enough. So I've talked about it more than enough. Like going back to it is repeating myself. Now, the title should be concise and descriptive. Often, titles are stated in terms of a functional relationship because such titles clearly indicate the independent and dependent variables. So in your title, if there's a way you can tell us how the relationship, like a functional relationship, then it's very easy for us to indicate the independent and dependent variables in your title. So making it very easy for us to even try and anticipate the kind of data sets or the kind of methodology you are going to employ, okay? Think of an informative but catchy title. An effective title not only piques the reader's interest, but also predisposes them favorably towards the proposal. You are presenting your proposal before professors, or you've given your proposal to a professor to review. If they see that the title is catchy and informative enough, then they are already predisposed favorably towards the proposal. They will say, okay, this is somebody who looks like, they are figuring out what they want to do. But if you have a very general title that somebody does not know the head from the tail, it's difficult for them to do that. This is supposed to be a group work, but then we are not going to do it. But it's up to you after this title, after this training, you need to go back and critique your research proposal that you're working on. If you have a research proposal you're working on, critique the title. Ask yourself, are the most important words towards the beginning of my title, or have I hidden them towards the end and somebody is figuring out where they are? So make it very clear at the beginning, okay? Then also you need to identify those important words. Now, we have written the title. Now we are in the introduction and background of the study. In the introductory part of your research, this is where you are going to paint the picture. You remember when Dr. Felicia was saying that you need to, this is where you are going to give us the background, like a very, a historical background of where the problem is. Now, the background provides the necessary background or context for your research problem. How to frame the research problem is perhaps the biggest problem in proposal writing. I'm not talking about that again. However, try to place your research question in the context of either a current hot area or an older area that remains viable. Secondly, you need to provide a brief but appropriate historical backdrop. Now, this is your background of the study. You need to give us a brief but appropriate historical backdrop. So what happens is, in this case, you need to tell us, because there's a specific problem you're studying. Okay, we need to know, not like in too much detail, but we need to get a historical backdrop of this problem. Let's say we are studying the issues around the decline in fish in fish catches in Lake Victoria or in a certain lake, or maybe Lake Malawi as an example. You can't tell us that you are going to look at this problem without telling us where all this started. You need to talk about the background of the fisheries, how has it been managed before? What are the problems that have faced this, that the fishery has faced over time, so that we get to understand how did we get here? How did we come to where we are right now, okay? Then thirdly, provide the contemporary context. That is why we're saying you need to give us a historical backdrop, and then you need then to provide the contemporary context in which your proposed research questions occupy the central stage. In short, try to paint your research question in broad brushes and at the same time bringing out its significance. Now, in your background, this is where you are also even going to give us definitions of certain terms, not definitions by writing them and defining them. But if you're talking about, let's say, teenage pregnancy, and you're talking about maybe, let's say, your research is about infant diarrhea or infant mortality, you need to tell us all these things. What is an infant, for example, or what is diarrhea? So you need to be, as you do this, you keep defining this term so that we will understand the context within which you are using them in the background. So this is where you are going to give us, like, where is this problem? The historical background, how did we get where we are, and what is the current situation where we are right now, okay? Now, these are what the introductory part generally covers. It states the research problem, which is often referred to as the part of the study, provide the context and set stage for your research question, presents the rationale for your study, briefly describe the major issues and sub-problems, identify key independent and dependent variables in your experiment or your study, state your hypothesis or theory, for example, exploratory or from whatever it is, the kind of research you are doing. Set the delimitation or boundaries of your proposed research and provide definitions of key concepts, but this is optional. So there are universities that will tell you to have a section, because the introductory chapter 1 has several sections. So it's not like one part. So the background of the study is just the first section of your introduction. Then you come to the objectives, you come to the statement of the problem, you come to the justification. All that is still the introduction. This is the introductory part of your study. Okay, so it can bring all, it can have all that. Now, the introductory part includes the statement of the problem. I'm not going to talk about this any further. I have talked about this enough. So the introductory part, chapter 1, contains the statement of the problem. So it is a clear statement of the problem that answers the question, why does this research need to be conducted? I'm not talking about that again. It contains several paragraphs of explanation. I want to differ slightly with this. You really cannot be allowed to use several paragraphs. Most of the time it's just one paragraph. And as I told you, don't go beyond one page. If you stretch it so much, go to one page. But my recommendation is always anything 3/4 of a page, you are done. You should not, if you go to several paragraphs as suggested here, you might end up losing it. Somebody reading through your statement of the problem does not really find the problem. They go around reading a lot of text and they don't understand what all those things are. In it, you are looking for something wrong, something that needs close attention, or something where existing methods no longer seem to be working. We've talked about statement of the problem long enough. I'm not going to talk about that again. Then you have the objectives for the research questions that you are going to talk about. But then I want us to have some little break. I think we started very early. We can have a little break and then come back and start from the objective. Meanwhile, I'm going to read whatever is in the chat during the break so that we can also come back and address some of them. We are now starting to look at the objectives of the study. So start thinking about that as we come back. Kevina, give us a guide. How long is our break?
We'll have a 10 minutes break. So we'll resume at 10:17 East African time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Glass of water. or you manage to open the windows. It has been some intense training. I've seen two or several questions on the chat, and one of them that I want to talk about is one that has been asked by Otina, and I'll just Otina, I will read it out so that everybody gets to maybe somebody else. Millicent Otina asks, hello, if some equipment are not available in my lab, am I allowed to send the specimen to another country to conduct the test for me, or should I omit the test for the study? If these tests will help you answer your research questions and you cannot do without them, it's in order. I have seen several students flying their samples even to Europe or taking them to other labs for analysis. And sometimes they even take them there and just pay for the analysis, and then they just now discuss the results of their research. It's allowed. I have seen it allowed in so many universities because understandably, how will the professors convince you that you have to do? The only thing is, if you want the university to pay for you the cost of those analyses and they tell you they don't have the money, then that is now the problem. But if the resources are there, if you can afford it yourself, or if the project can allow you or can pay for you, then why not? Now, Ruben is asking, is it, okay, is it, does one need to cite or to do citations when writing the several problem? Well, this one has been quite a bit of some question. I think it has been, it's a debate that has been there for some time. Now, in your statement of the problem section, you are stating the problem the way you understand it. But if you are setting a problem and trying to quantify the problem, so maybe you are stating that the problem is 75% of candidates fail this kind of a test, then you really need to tell us where that statistic has come from. You cannot go around throwing, you cannot use statistics to write your statement of the problem without telling us where that statistic has come from. But if you're just narrating the problem based on maybe what you've read, then if you're not providing certain bold claims like statistics or numbers, then that really might not really lead you to do citations. But then if you cite also so much in a statement of the problem, then there's a feeling that this statement of the problem you're writing is not your own way of thinking, but it is the thinking of other people. That is why you keep citing them. So you need to cite. You can cite, yes, but be very conservative in your citations. I always tell people, if you cite more than 2, then I start having a problem with the statement of problem. So even if you are supporting your problem with certain statistics, try to be very cautious about your citation. But yes, you can cite if you're providing statistics. Someone is asking, investigating the influence of outliers and skewness on random forest performance in regression tasks, a case study of. Now, the problem I have always is if you write your title in two parts, then I have a problem with it, because then it means that the first part is not clear enough. That is why you are putting full colons and then providing more details in the second part. So I'm not saying that you can never use titles that are written in 2 parts, but I have a big problem with the titles that are written in 2 parts. So I always advise people, try to make sure that your title is in 1 part. But then these words, investigating or studying or assessing, I always also try to avoid them. You can just start with the influence of without starting with the investigating or studying or but these are things we can discuss further. Now, we are now at the objectives. You remember, or research questions, but we'll get there. So someone also asked whether there's a difference between objectives and hypotheses. I saw that question and I have ignored it because that is where we are going. Now, an objective is a clear, concise, declarative statement which provides direction to investigate the variables. It means that this is what really guides even the kind of data sets or the kind of methodology you are going to apply. So that is why it's like you are dividing your whole title into manageable chunks. you have one big piece of ugali, for those who know what ugali is, and you cannot swallow it in one bite. It will choke you. So what you do is you break it down into manageable chunks so that you know how to deal with each piece at a time. So that is what you do with your specific objectives. Now, in studies, you have objectives. So mostly we have what we call a general objective, and then we have specific objectives. General objectives mostly borrow from the title. You find the general objective reads almost pretty much like the title. And then the specific objectives are now where you are breaking down this general objective or your title into manageable chunks that will now guide you into how you are going to collect the data or the amount of data sets or the kind of data sets that you need to be able to answer the main questions of your research. So that is what objectives are. Now, hypothesis or research questions. Now, depending on the kind of study you are doing, you can either formulate hypothesis or you can formulate research questions. Okay? Now, an hypothesis, for example, is a testable explanation proposed before conducting a project. Both seek to predict relationships. Now, to use hypothesis or research questions depend on the purpose of the study, the approach and design of methodology. Now, if, for example, you are comparing the influence of something or the relationship between something and another one, then you can either decide to use a hypothesis. So hypotheses, as we say, are testable explanations. So most hypotheses are based on, these are based on already previous information. So you most of the time you predict whether there is going to be a relationship or you predict whether there is going to be. But then you are going to test and either reject or accept this hypothesis at the end of your data analysis. Then a research question is used to analyze and investigate a topic. It is written as a question and is inquisitive in nature. Okay, we'll see. So we have what we call causal questions. So we compare two or more phenomena and determine if a relationship exists. Yes, Dr. Gennett.
Thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity. It was Mary Onga who was raised about the objectives. She said objectives should have to be smart. And shall I add something regarding to that?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. As well presented, objectives should have to provide us structure and direction. So they should have to be smart. That means they should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, as well as they should have to have time boundary. So when you say specific, they should have to show us the depth of the issue you want to address. That means they should have to show us the direction clearly. And when you say measurable, you are presenting or you are writing your research for some organization. It might be for a university research center or something. So when you say they should be measurable, somebody should have to monitor the progress. For example, one of my students come up with some objective and it says to understand the genetic diversity of sorghum varieties. Here he said to understand. So it's difficult to measure the understanding of that student, yeah? So it's better to say to investigate. So they should be measurable. We have to measure the progress of the research based on those objectives. And the other one is achievable. When you say achievable, we have to see the available resource we have, like the material, the lab materials we have, the time and the knowledge we have. So objectives should be based upon the resources which is at hand. When you say relevance, it should be in line with our mission and vision of the organization, whether it be to the university or to the community. So relevance is also another important. The first one is time boundary. When you say time boundary, it should be not too soon, as well as should also not to be far. We have to consider when the data will be available, when should be analyzed, when the results should be available, or when the research should be compiled. So thank you, Mary. These are the 5 things need to be addressed under the objective. And it's obvious that objectives should be smart. They should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, as well as they should have to have time boundaries. Thank you. This is to add to say.
Thank you so much, Doc, for that valuable addition and contribution to this. I think that is where most students also struggle. The example you gave, that one of the specific objectives is to understand. How will you measure the level of understanding? So at the end of the day, we say, I managed to understand. It's very subjective. But if you say to determine or to assess or maybe to investigate, then I investigated and came up with this, or I determined that this is the amount, or I determined this is the relationship. So those are some of the things, the words that make your objective specific. And talking about measurability is because if you say you want to understand, for us, it's really difficult for us to know whether you understood or not. So if you are trying to understand the relationship between something, it's difficult for us to measure whether you understood that relationship or not. But if you say you investigated or you wanted to determine, then you will surely be able to measure whether you determined and to what extent. So those are the things. We were talking about research questions. We will get a plenary session where we'll discuss most of these things. So don't worry, we will get back to that. Now, the next one was descriptive questions that seek to describe a phenomena and often study how much or how often or what is the change. How often do college-age students use Twitter, as an example? Then there's comparative questions that aim to examine the difference between two or more groups in relation to one or more variables. What is the difference in the caloric intake of high school girls and boys? So basically, these are just because your research questions must be based on your research objectives. So if you have just the same like hypothesis, if you have an hypothesis, if your study is hypothesizing certain relationships or investigating relationships or interactions, then it means that each objective must have its own corresponding hypothesis. And for research questions, it's the same. So if you are going to use research questions instead of hypothesis, it means that each research objective in your study must have a corresponding research question, depending on the kind of study you are doing. Now, hypothesis, as I've said, is a predictive in nature and used when significant knowledge already exists on the subject, which allows the prediction to be made. It is always written as a statement. Okay? So that one we already not going to do that group work. Then we have what we call significance of the study. Okay? Now, the significance of the proposed study, we talked about the statement of the problem. We are now talking about the objectives, and now we are talking about the significance of the study. As I said, some universities will tell you to write justification of the study and not the significance of the study. Some universities will tell you to write both the justification and the significance. And somebody would ask, is the justification not the significance of the study? What really is the difference? There is a difference, maybe not so big, but it's just about why is your research important. Now, let me explain it this way. The justification of the study is about the output of your research. I will explain, but just pick it as this before I explain further. Now, the justification is going to talk about the output of your study, so the data you are going to collect, how that data is going to contribute in solving that problem. But then the significance of the study is the outcome of your study. Okay? The justification is talking about the output, while the significance is talking about the outcome of your research. The significance is about how will the results of your work be utilized. So how will they be utilized? How will they be applied in real life or in trying to solve the problem? So you collected data, you came up with information. How can this be useful to policymakers, for example? How can it be used and in what way? So if it will be useful to policymakers, how can it influence policy in your field? If it is going to be useful to in academia, maybe to fellow students or researchers, like they can build their future research ideas can be built based on the data you've collected. How will that be done? So in the significance is about the outcome of your study. How will then this be applied? But in the justification, you are going to tell us, I'm going to collect this kind of data. So the information I'm going to generate is A. So that one is talking about the specific data you are going to collect and how that will contribute. Now, the significance of the study needs to show why the intended research is important and justifies the research effort. It outlines the significance or relevance of the topic. It should demonstrate how your research benefits or impacts others and the people who might benefit from your research. That is the significance. Okay, now that is the significance of the study. So the significance of the study is where we are going to narrate that the results of this study can then be used by policymakers, and these are some of the policies that can come out of this. There are universities that will, after you do your proposal, there are universities, increasingly, I've seen a few of them in Kenya, where you are also told to write the possible policy briefs or a policy brief that can come out of your proposal. Now, that is anchored on the importance on the significance of your study. So you need to talk about what kind of policies can come out of this study. Okay, so that is the significance of your study. Then the next part, and mostly it is chapter 2, is now when we are getting to literature review. And I think Dr. I'll go back and check the name very well. It's a bit difficult for me to pronounce so that I get it right. Dr. Fisher, maybe if I didn't pronounce it right, there's a place in the beginning when she was explaining about, she gave a summary, as I say, and in her summary, part of it, she said that when you are doing your literature review, you are not just summarizing what you have done. You are using this now to justify or support the research gap that you have demonstrated. You've told us there is the gap, read through literature, this is the gap that is there. So you are going to use a literature review section to justify that gap that you say by showing us what has already been done. Now, your literature review section has to be guided by your objectives. You can't just go around reviewing literature, or your literature review section has to be structured in a certain way. The structure or the subheadings under which you are going to conduct review will depend or will be dictated by your objectives, okay? And that is going to be dictated by your specific objectives, okay? So your specific objectives will determine the sections under which you are going to review your literature. And you are going to have subsections based on that. Now, there are two types of literature review research. And for me, in natural sciences, we really just do what we call empirical literature review, where we review literature of data that is already of empirical research. So people have done research, they have published papers, and the papers are out there. So, you know, empirical literature review, that is what we do in natural sciences. But then I've seen people in mostly in social sciences do, apart from empirical literature review, they also do what we call theoretical literature review. And somebody asked about theoretical framework and conceptual framework. No, that was yesterday during my TikTok live. So now there is what we call the empirical literature review, where you are looking for empirical data and empirical information. People conducted research, they reported, they published papers and reported whatever. You are going to do that. And the theoretical literature review is where we're going to review certain theories and then say that I have reviewed these theories, A, B, C, D. These are the ones that are relevant to my research, but I have chosen this to anchor my research on because of reason A, B, C, D. You need to justify that, hey, this is the theory within which I'm anchoring my research, and this is the reason why that is happening. So these two literature reviews might sound to be the same, except that one is the theoretical literature review is focusing on review of theories and then deciding on which theory is relevant and informs your work. The empirical literature review is where you are going to do literature review of research papers that have empirical that have been, have undergone empirical research. So that is now the difference. The other thing, apart from the fact that you need to have, your section is guided by the subtopics in your section, in your literature review section is guided by the specific objectives. This section is not just about summaries of what has been done. What happens is, in this case, we always want to see the brain of the researcher in the literature review section. What is your own analysis? Fine, these people have done this. These are the points of argument. But what is your own thinking? we need to critique, and that is why you are doing literature review. You are going to say, so and so did this, so and so said this, research has been done on this. However, this one is also still lacking, and hence, you keep referring to the problem in your statement, in your literature review. You might also need to be mentioning the gaps that you are seeing, because that is also how you are going to support your study. The other thing that I also want to talk about in the literature review section is that you need to keep tying your literature review to the current topic all the time. Every time you are writing, especially towards the end of each section. Let's say you have different sections, you are writing in paragraphs. Towards the end of this paragraph, you need to link how that section fits into the broader context of what you are studying. Sometimes if you just review literature and summarize everything without showing us how the section or how the text you have written or how the text we have read fits into your current study, then it's difficult for us to know why you are putting that text there. So when you are writing your literature review, try to link it back to the problem every time. Okay? Now, the literature review section can benefit from literature review. And this literature review, you can only review literature if you can be able to access the information. Part of what I'm going to show you is the platforms where you can get literature and download them and read them. That one I'll do. But then the literature review section is just about review of literature, I think, as I have said. So I've explained a lot of things there. I might not really get back to this. I was not even explaining what's on the screen. I was just saying these things. Now, this section develops broad ideas of what is already known in a field and what questions are still unanswered. We talked about this. It helps you develop now that broad idea. This is where you are going to tell us what has been done before and what is still remaining. It will assist you in narrowing, in further narrowing the problem for investigation, okay? You must show that you have looked through the literature and have found the latest updates in your field of study. Now, sometimes you find your supervisors will tell you that you want to only cite data that is 5 years old and below. I don't know what requirements is in your university. Maybe you can type in the chat. What does your university tell you about the kind of information you are going to put? Some universities will tell you that if you cite anything that is more than 5 years old, we are not getting into that. So like now we are in 2024, you are told we only want papers that were published between 2020 and 2024. How then can you narrow that down? I will show you in one of the platforms that I will demonstrate. Now, if you want to do this kind of literature review, one is you need to access the papers. Secondly, you need to read them, and that consumes time. And I will show you how then you can save time by using certain tools. Now, it also helps you make sure that you are not your investigation is not just reinventing the wheel. Sometimes you might think that you are doing something so unique that no one has ever done, but then you go through literature and realize, hey, this thing has been done over and over and over again. So the wheel, in most of the times, the wheel is always there. It's just about modifying it. Rarely do we reinvent the wheel. Sometimes we reinvent, but in very few occasions, okay? So I will show you some of this. I will demonstrate to you how you can use Scholastic and also how you can use dimensions, but then we are going to get there. So we've talked about the literature review. The literature review serves several important functions. One, it ensures that you are not reinventing the wheel, as I have said. It gives credit to those who have laid the groundwork for your research. You remember, when you are doing your literature review, you will be citing people. You write and cite, because if you don't cite, then you are going to fall into the problems of plagiarism, because then you shall have kidnapped someone's information or someone's knowledge without citing them. So it gives credit to those who have laid groundwork for your research. So make sure that as you write, you also cite. And these days, there are several reference management tools that can help you cite automatically and also generate reference list. So kindly type for me in the chat the reference management tool or the reference manager that you have been using. If you have been doing manually, kindly also just type manual, and I will see. If there are so many people who are doing it manually, I will show you one of those reference management tools. But I am very sure that it's very unlikely that so many people are. I know there are people who are still doing it manually, but it's not a good use of your time. because sometimes you are told to do APA, you are told to do Chicago, but then if you are doing it manually, then imagine you have to check there's a full stop after the first name, then there's a semicolon. That's a lot of work. These reference managers will do it automatically for you by just clicking a button. So you need to, as you cite, it's a good thing to learn how to use at least one of those reference managers. And I think there are RefWorks, there is EndNote, some people are using Zotero. I use Mendeley quite a bit. So those are some of those. Now, the literature review section also demonstrates your work of the research problem, your knowledge of the research problem, demonstrates your understanding of the theoretical and research issues related to your research question. It shows your ability to critically evaluate relevant literature information. Remember when I was talking about critiquing whatever you see? Because if I'm reading through your literature review section and I'm just finding you summarizing without critiquing, then I will say you just summarized information, you did not review literature. Like even peer review in publications, you don't just summarize what this person has written in their paper. What you do is you read and critique, okay? It also indicates your ability to integrate and synthesize the existing literature. That is very clear. Provides new theoretical insights or develop a new model as the conceptual framework of your research. You know, people in the field of social sciences and maybe sometimes business, they have what we call a theoretical framework, or either theoretical or conceptual framework. And in most cases, it's conceptual framework. So conceptual framework is where you draw a concept of how all these concepts fall into place, or how these variables interlink with one another. So the dependent variables, the intervening variables, for example, the mediating variables, or all those variables, and then finally how they now finally link to the dependent variables on the other end. So all this interplay. So that is, you can only get that through literature review, because if you don't review literature, it's very difficult for you to know how all those variables interact. So you can only find out how they interact if you read through literature. So that is part of what literature review will help you do, okay? Here we have the context in which the problem arises, historical and current research in the researchers in the field. It is important to show that your previous work, what previous researchers have discovered and what they have not discovered, okay? Now, one of the key elements that your proposal readers look at when deciding whether or not to approve the proposal. Because if you have not done enough literature review, then I will assume, or if your literature review section is not up to date, you are citing things that were done in 1971, 2001, then I will say that you are not up to date with the kind of information we are providing. So I might start telling you that, hey, you need to go back and think about this, because I really think there's quite still a lot that needs to be done. So, demonstrates that you have really done work. Never say that your area is so new that no research exists. Very, very highly unlikely that you will find that there's no literature completely about something. And especially with the database that I want to show you after this, you will always find something in your field somehow. So the literature review section, as I get out of this section, it's not just about synthesizing, it's not about summarizing, but it's about reviewing and synthesizing information. So you should be able to do that. Now, the methodology is now, how do you intend to do the work? Different research methodologies are out there. Depending on the kind of research you want to do, decide on a specific methodology. It's difficult for me to sit down here and start explaining to you that if you want to do a research on this field, this is what you do. Then I will have to do a million examples, which will be, impossible in this kind of setting. So what I want to stress on this section is that look at the kind of data sets you want to collect. Look at the research questions you have and decide on the best methodology that can help you answer those questions, or the best methodology that can help you collect relevant and sufficient data sets to answer the questions that you have. It's difficult, really, for me, because I know there are people here who are in the medical field, there are people here who are in arts and humanities, there are people in natural sciences, there are engineers here. So it's difficult for me to say that this is a methodology that will apply for everyone else. It's not like a plug and play. you just look at the methodology. And the good thing with methodologies is you read through literature. And when you go to these papers, you go to their methodology section and just see how they have done it. And you can easily adopt that. I'm not saying copy paste, but you can adopt and modify. Now, the methodology outlines the approach or the strategy for conducting the research to answer a question or realize your objective, plan the procedure that will be used in the investigation, review different approaches, designs, and methods for investigating your area of research, and specify tools required to meet your research goal. Now, I'm going to use this example that you are going to do a study in the field of social sciences, and you've chosen that is going to be a longitudinal study. There's a difference between what we call a cross-sectional study and a longitudinal study. For a cross-sectional study, it's like a snapshot. You're just going to the field and you're going to investigate and get what is happening at that time. A longitudinal study is, for example, where you apply an intervention and then you recruit certain households, certain subjects, and then you monitor over time to see the influence or the impact of that intervention. So that takes a long time. But whichever, you might decide, okay, I want to use to collect qualitative data, or I want to collect quantitative data, or I want to use what we call a mixed method. Whatever methodology, sometimes could be experimental. You want to set up experiments and measure growth and measure all these things. Depending on your field, there's no problem. But you need to explain it in a way that if somebody picks your proposal and they have the resources you had, they can be able to replicate your work without even calling you. They can easily just read through your methodology section and say, okay, if I want to do a study on the impacts of financial deepening, for example, on the performance of SMEs in Nairobi County, I should be able to do this. So I should be able to investigate, or maybe, so what goes into the methodology section? Mostly part of it is the target population. For example, let's say you are in the field of social sciences. So the target population, which population are you going to do? The number. Okay, so sample size. So sample size, there are several formulae that are used to calculate sample size. Then you have to give us the rationale for why you selected that specific kind of population. So you are going to investigate this, and we are going to study people who are living with disability as an example. You need to explain to us why that is a unique kind of population. Then the methodology is whether you want to do mixed method. We need to explain whether you are going to do qualitative study, explorative, whatever exploratory study, all those things. But then what data sets, because the procedure of data collection is very different from the instrument and the tools you are going to use. So you need to tell us the tools you're going to use. I'm going to use structured questionnaires, for example. I'm going to use key informant interview guides. I'm going to use FGD guides. And so that means that in your data collection procedures, you're going to tell us how you will administer each of these tools. So how will you administer questionnaires, and will the questionnaires collect for you? Are you designing the questionnaire to give you qualitative or quantitative data? You are going to do focus group discussions, for example. How are you going to conduct the exact focus group discussion, the composition, the number of men and women, the length of time you are going to do this? So all those things need to come out very clearly. You are going to do key informant interviews. How will you select the key informants and why? All those things. So the methodology section is a section where I cannot really say that I will sit here and tell you that this is the methodology that everyone has to follow. That will be very difficult for me. So it depends on the kind of data sets you want to collect, and also depends so much on the kind and the amount of data you want to collect, but it also depends. It's also field specific, okay? Then after the methodology, now we have what we call the time frame, and sometimes it's called the work plan. So this is what really explains what will be done when. So you want to be sure that your investigation is feasible within the time you have. Experienced researchers tend to underestimate the amount of time for each activity. Check with the more inexperienced researchers tend to underestimate the amount of time for each activity. So check with a more experienced researcher. You will write a proposal and say that you want to do a certain thing within 3 months, and then you realize that is not even feasible. An experienced researcher will always tell you, hey, you cannot be able to investigate the growth parameters, or you cannot be able to study the reproductive characteristics of this fish or this animal or this plant within 2 months, you have to give it a year or you have to give it 7 months. So that will guide you. Map out what you want to do and where you want to do it. Keep in mind your goals and objectives when setting deadlines for progress. Give an overview of what you want you will undertake, of when you will undertake a specific activity, bi-weekly or monthly, but not daily. Now, daily would depend. Maybe sometimes you are doing some lab analysis, like maybe you are culturing some bacteria or some colonies of fungi or microbiology lab, then that you might end up doing it daily. But in most cases, you either do weekly or monthly. Now, this, of course, depends on your experimental design or your research design. So this would not really be a big problem to you. You will include time for to prepare the final research products as well. So when you are planning your time, also plan about the publication, the peer review processes, because those are some of the things that can delay your work. Okay? What are some of the questions that you can ask yourself when you're coming up with your schedule? When will your research start and finish? Are there particular stages to the research like piloting, screening? So piloting, most of the time, is where you already have identified everything. If you are doing if you are doing a study that requires survey and stuff, it means you've developed your tools. You want to take it out there, test it on a few of your subjects and see whether it really answers the objectives of the research questions you have. So what happens in those cases is where you go out there, do a pilot test, and then based on the feedback, because it's always recommended that you analyze. When you go out and do a pilot study, you have to analyze the data from that pilot study, because then it will advise you whether you need to adjust, add certain questions, drop some questions, modify some questions, depending on the kind of feedback you're going to get. So piloting is very important. And even in not just in surveys alone, but even when you are doing in natural sciences, let's say I want to go and do some research on a certain fish in Victoria. Before I go out full blown, what I need to do is go out there, do a bit of some sampling, if it's just a day or a few hours, and then it gives me an idea. Okay, so if I sample here, then I will be able to get the kind of fish I want. So piloting is very important. Okay, then you need also to ask yourself, are the timelines realistic? Is it influenced by external constraints or deadlines? How will you provide regular updates and progress reports? To whom will you provide these updates? Okay. Then we have the budget. So your list of budget items and the calculations you have done to arrive at a figure for each item should be summarized. These days, for PhD, I have seen in many occasions where they really don't want a table where you are writing the item and so sometimes these days they would want the item, maybe the value for the amount, and then on another side they will now need to get the outcome, so or the justification, for example. So why do you need to buy a 4-wheel drive car, for example? So you need to justify. So there is in more cases you will always see that they have a column where they are going to put the justification, so budget justification, okay? And a narrative portion of the budget is used to explain the line items in the budget. So sometimes people just use a narrative. You will be expected to detail the cost of the project, including the cost of all resources such as travel, accommodation, and equipment. Budgetary considerations are important for all projects and should be as realistic as possible. No one wants to give their money to be wasted or diverted to other uses. So that is why it's important for you to convince. This is now not only in academic proposals, but also in grant proposals. You need to convince them that the budget you are providing is going into just to the use of this project. Okay, so you need to ensure your project is feasible. Then we are now talking about the list of references for that. So references, this one depends on what university. So some universities will tell you that they want you to do Chicago. Some will tell you they want you to do what we call APA, 7th edition or whatever. Just ask your university the methodology or the reference method or the reference format that is allowed by your university. So this depends so much on the university or sometimes in your field of study. And as I said, it's always a good thing to try and use a reference manager, because typing these references manually, you will make mistakes. And even apart from that, it's a lot of work. After typing through my whole document, I have to go down to the review to the reference list to again start typing these references manually and then try to arrange them alphabetically. It's just a lot of work. So what happens in that case is, when you have a reference manager that you're using Zotero, EndNote, all those, Mendeley that like I use, it will do this automatically for you. So once you instruct it, it will cite for you the work that you have instructed it to cite, and it will also include it. It will add it down in the reference sections. Okay. Now, why do proposals get rejected? Some of the reasons is the nature of the problem. So if you fail to establish general significance of your work, your proposal can be rejected. If the research plan is vague and not presented in detail, no or lacking testable hypothesis. So too many hypotheses donates lack of focus. If you are too ambitious, poor procedural irregularities. So if some parts are missing, or you missed certain deadlines, or incorrect budget, those are some of the reasons. Now, I want us to stop here and then have a bit of some discussions before I show you a platform where you will get all the literature you want that go back to 1663 or 1660 something. If you are doing a meta-analysis, for example, you might want a platform where you can get as many papers as possible that can also go back to the years. We are through with proposal writing at this stage, and I want us to open up a plenary session where we can now be able to discuss freely if there are questions and if there are additions to this. And so pretty much this is just a plenary session before we get to the next section, where I want us to now talk about where you can get literature from and how to read them. So I see people are using Mendeley, someone is doing manual, some people are doing Zotero. No, it's not allowed to use hypothesis and research questions in the same study, because they almost serve the same purpose. So if you are told to use a research questions, just craft them as research questions. If you use hypothesis, then they only have to be hypothesis. Zotero, manual, Mendeley, manual, Mendeley, Quillbot, someone is using also Quillbot, EndNote, yeah. So most people are using, at least people are using certain, some reference managers, which is a good thing. There are people who are still doing manual. I really don't recommend that. So you really need to think about learning how to use a reference manager. Now, it is the point where we are going now to have a discussion. As I told you, I was going to save some time towards the end so that we can have a discussion. And this is where, yes, Ogada Ruben. Yes, Ruben Ogada.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yes, thanks for a wonderful presentation and the general insight on the overall proposal writing. Yes, I just have one concern or question.
Yes.
Yeah, when writing a statement of the problem and justification, is there a need for citation? Do you need to cite? Or just write it in a plain form? That is my great concern, because I've seen some justification and some statement of the problem. They have some citation on them. Is that a good idea or contrary to that? Thank you.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of after the break, that is the first thing we tackled about whether you need to include citations in include citations in your justification or in your. So I'll just go back there. Now, when you are writing your statement of the problem, you are stating the problem as you see it. Now, also maybe based on the literature that you've read. So you've read literature, you've summarized, and you've also synthesized to know what has been done here and what has not been done and what really the problem is. So most of the time people are discouraged from citing, but it's not like you are told completely to never cite, never cite. What you do, like when you are citing, when you are writing a statement of the problem and you want to quantify the problem. Let's say you are saying, let's say we are talking about something around SMEs, the performance of SMEs in Kisumu County as an example, or maybe in Addis Ababa city, and you are trying to count. You are making bold statements. For example, like 75% of SMEs do not survive beyond 3 years in Addis Ababa. That's as an example, and you are using this in your statement of the problem. Then somebody will ask you, where did this come from? Where? If so, those are very bold claims, and those are statistics. So for statistics, you need to cite, because then somebody will ask you, this is just a figure you're putting here, 75%, 1 million people have died over the in the last 200 years. You really, if you're citing statistics, there is an encouragement for you to cite. But as I also say, the more you cite, the more you try to convince other people that this problem is not the way I see it. I'm writing the problem the way other people see it, because that is why I'm citing them. So I always tell people, if you're citing, don't go beyond 2 citations. If you're citing, keep it 2 and below. But in most cases, you are encouraged never to cite, because you are citing, you are narrating this problem the way you see it. So you can cite 1 or 2, but just if it is inevitable that you have to cite. But if you are supporting, if you are quantifying a problem, it's also a good thing to cite it, because somebody will ask you about those figures. Somebody will ask you, where did you see these figures, or where did these figures come from, or are you the one who came up with these figures? So, but if you are writing plain text that is not making very strong, bold claims, then there is no need for you to cite. The same is for justification. If you are justifying and you're using certain figures to justify, then you have to cite, because those figures were read or you got them from somewhere else. So you cannot claim. Somebody will ask you, this 72% you're putting here, are you the one who came up with it, or how did you arrive at this figure? So in those cases, you are supposed to cite. But as I say, try to keep it on the law, so that somebody does not see like you are narrating the problem from the perspective of other people other than yours. Any other question or concern? Or I also want somebody to also bring their opinion on this. That is my opinion. Yes, Alison, thanks.
No, thank you. Yes, thank you. I think that has been a problem, and like when you have some supervisors, people have different perspectives, because most of them also come from different backgrounds. You find one of the supervisors tells you this, and the other one comes and challenges the whole thing. Recently, I was meeting my supervisors over such kind of misconceptions. The other one told me the settlement of the problem should go beyond a page, because he did his doctorate from USA. And the other one who did from South Africa told me, no, it is supposed to be at least if a maximum of a third a page. And there I became confused. Finally, when we came for reconciliation, we have not concluded up to now. So those are the challenges that we face in the field. And then you also sometimes find that when it comes to defense,
yes,
in the forum, you find some of the jury members will even disqualify the whole thing when you are being guided by supervisors or two up that extent. So that is a challenge we always face in the field. I don't know what you can say about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, the role actually and the idea around TCC Africa is not to negate what your supervisor tells you. And I think this is one thing I started by saying when I started the training, and I'll keep saying it. It's not like when we are telling you, then you go and tell your supervisor, no, TCC told us that you cannot write this. No. as you've said it very rightly, people come from different backgrounds, and also our trainings are different. But what my opinion, and this is what I strongly know, that if you are writing a statement of the problem, is if it goes beyond a page max, then you don't know, that problem is not clear to you. You are still just trying to figure it out. My supervisor tells me that the maximum I should write is 3/4 of a page. Another supervisor tells me that the maximum I should write is 1 or 2 pages. So that is now, as a student, that is the dilemma I am in. But for me, I always tell people, don't go beyond 1 page. Try to strive and try and keep it within 3/4 of a page. If it goes to 1 page, resist the urge of going beyond 1 page. Because if it is more than 1 page, then I'm reading a whole 2 pages trying to find the problem. It's like even yourself, you've not figured out what the problem is. And that is why I showed you, and I encouraged you to try and use the problem tree. And I showed you and I demonstrated very well how to use the problem tree, because the problem tree will help you not only identify, but also analyze the problem. Because if you analyze the problem very well, it's very easy for you. It's in your fingertips. You are not really trying to find out all these things because you already do it out. For me, I always draw it out on a piece of paper. Just put the problem in the middle of the tree, and then you find these root causes and link them. The subroot, the subcause, the subcause, until I know this is caused by this, and this is caused by this, how they are linked. Now, once all that is linked, everything, then now when I come to narrating them, it's very easy. I just refer back to my paper and see, okay, this problem is caused by this, and whatever this first cause, the root of this is this. So slowly by slowly. And then you go to the consequences and even write those consequences, that these are the consequences that this problem is causing. So it's easier for you now to write it in 3/4 of a page or in 1 page than if you have not done anything. I'm seeing Barack Samuel says 3/4 of a page is perfect. Most research institutions encourage this. So I will encourage you to do 3/4 of a page. If it goes beyond 1 page, my friend, even if you read it your own self, you will realize there are either places where you are narrating the problem twice, or there are places where you are now just repeating. It's not still very concrete and not very clear. And you remember, as most of us have already said, and we agree, that the main focus is your statement of problem. We want to see, is the problem coming out? Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to convince me that your research is important if I'm struggling to find the problem. So go back and try as much as you can to how do you say, to use the problem tree. If you will appreciate, you will give me some feedback. Just draw it. It might look like you're playing. Get your notebook, draw it in the middle. Say, this is the problem I'm tackling. It is teenage pregnancy is the problem. What is causing the teenage pregnancy? Then you branch them out slowly by slowly, all the root causes, all of them. Try as much, just think. And then after that, what are the consequences of teenage pregnancy? Draw all of them, draw every single thing. Then now when you look at it, try to address, you will find it very easy for you to now write your statement of the problem, because you have everything figured out and everything is now linked up. So it's very easy for you to know how this fits into this and how this causes this and how this then leads to this. It's very easy for you. Now, this will also help you. Yes, Emmanuel, the link and the materials will be shared. How this also helps you is when you talk about, because you already know the consequences. Now, when you are going to write your justification or the significance of the study, you can go back and, you can revisit your problem tree and see, okay, these are the consequences. Okay, now I need to write a justification that is trying to explain how my research is coming up with a solution to these consequences. Boom, you have the statement of the problem and the justification or significance just out of the problem tree that you drew out. Try as much as you can. And if you have students you are working with, just go and help them use the problem tree. If you find a student is struggling with writing the statement of the problem, it's like they have not figured it out, because all these things are jumbled up in their heads and they really don't know how these things are linked together. If you encourage them now to start using the problem tree, then they will be able to figure out, okay, so this feeds into this feeds into this feeds into this, and they will finally find how everything works together. So that is my advice. there was a question. Anybody with another comment? Because I want now, somebody's asking, I want now to show you a platform where you can get literature, because we say you need to read, but then for you to read, you need to access this information. So I'm going to show you dimensions and demonstrate how you can use dimensions to be able to access information, access data, and access even more, including data sets. I'm going to show you, but I wanted us to have some little discussion here over what we have talked about in general. As I said, we are here to just guide the discussion. It's not like we know everything. I know I have shared a few tips here and there, but TCC is an initiator of negotiations. So this is a place where this, for me, I'm just here to lead the conversation, so that, because I know we have different backgrounds, we have different experiences, all of us can learn. We learn a lot at TCC team. We are quite a bit of us here. We learn quite a bit from these sessions. And that's why we really don't want to convert it into, a lecture where we show you what we bring. You see, I kept also asking people to also contribute, and you can imagine the contributions we've gotten from, Dr. Janet, Ruben, and even Alex, people who have contributed. And as I say, nothing is right and wrong. We are all researchers, and we are all right, and we are all, of course, we are all right and we are all wrong. But we are here to, demonstrate. Yes, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. One other concern I would like to find out is in the introduction or chapter 1, there is that purpose of the study. And there are some people who just say you give a very bold and clear statement indicating why the study is going to be conducted. And then some other people also say at least a paragraph. Others will say at least 3 sentences. Now, which one? I don't know. What you can tell us? Thank you.
Which specific part of the proposal are you talking about? The background of the study?
I'm talking, they say the purpose of the problem. There's one part, a subsection in the chapter 1 in the proposal, purpose of the study. How long is it supposed to be there, and how long should it be?
Now, whether it's supposed to be there or not, that depends on the university, because the university will give you guidance. Some universities will only want you to talk about, in the introductory part of the proposal, some universities, just give me a minute so that I can share something here. Just if you allow me, I'll share a proposal and then give an idea of what I'm talking. Okay, I will share my screen so that I just want to give some idea here. So, of course, just give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Is my screen visible, Alex?
Yeah, I can see it.
Thank you. So I'm just going to run through this. I'm not saying this is the perfect one. As I say, also here, as I say, different universities will give you different titles different formats. So I'm not telling you that this is the format that should be used, but I'm just going to use it to answer part of the questions that you are asking. Now, the first part of your proposal is the introductory part. Of course, now you see, let me just look at the structure of this proposal, for example. So there's a title page, then there's always something, the declaration page, those ones are, each university has their own. Then we have the list of figures and the list of tables if they are there. Then we have the list of abbreviations and acronyms. Then we have the abstract that narrates everything that you want to do as a summary. Then we have chapter 1. Now, chapter 1 is the background of the study. So here you see this guy starts by saying the concept of integrated aquaculture represents a promising avenue. So this is just a general thing, but you see now they go ahead now to provide, this study focuses the impacts of that in Egypt and Kenya, and then it goes ahead now to give, even statistics about this. So it gives a background of the study, putting it in context. So then after that is the statement of the problem. And then after that, this is a bit long. Then the justification of the problem. also another long one. Then the objectives. So we have the general objective, then the specific objectives. He has four of them. Now, when writing your specific objectives, another thing I forgot is don't use Roman numbers. Number them like this: objective 1, objective 2, objective 3. Sometimes I find students, how do you say? You see students presenting, and then it's objective 1, but then it is Roman 1. The Roman numbers where they are numbered in letters, like I, 2 I's to mean 2. So just remember them like this: 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then we have the research questions. This person has used research questions. And you see, research questions are now very close to the objectives. Now, the objective 1 is to assess the adoption levels and patterns of integrated aquaculture among smallholder farmers in selected rural areas of Kenya and Egypt. Look at the question. What are the adoption levels? You see? So it is this one is going to assess the adoption levels. But then now the question is, what are the adoption levels? So that is the question. That your research seeks to answer. So he has used research questions instead of. But then you see in their university, apart from writing the justification up there, there is also significance of study. See, and then now after the significance of the study, then the scope of study, assumptions of the study, there is limitations of the study. Then there's operational definition of terms. Then now we go to chapter 2, where we are going to literature review. Now, in this case, the purpose of study is not there. So the university does not require them to put the purpose. Now, I don't know what difference is, if there is a difference between the purpose of the study, the justification, and the significance, and even the rationale. If you ask me, these are all one and almost the same thing with very slight differences. Now, the purpose of the study is the reason why you want to do the study. So the purpose of the study, or the, what really the study is going to bring, like the contribution. And for me, you cannot be able to give enough information about the purpose of the study in just one sentence or in just one. So it has to be a few words, maybe, a paragraph or something. But basically, it's just almost like the justification of why your study is important, or a significance, the significance of your study or the rationale for your study. So depending on a university, I think the purpose is almost the same as the significance or the justification of your study. I'm seeing some comments on the chat. I would like to know, under the introduction, is the historical background compulsory, or is it based on a particular institution? The historical background, you are not going to, in the introduction, like in the background of the study, you are not going to write a title that is the historical background. In your background of the study, that is where we are going to provide the historical background, but not into too much detail. Just give a bit of introduction. Like when you are talking about a problem about food insecurity in a certain area, you need to tell us so that we get to understand how did this problem come to a point where I now have to study it for it to be solved, for example. So where did this start from? Where did the rain start beating us, for example? So the historical background is not like it's a dedicated section, but it is just whatever you write within the text in the background. So you need to give us this so that we get to understand where this problem started from, or how the situation has changed over time. So it is just something you bring out, but not really like you have to write a specific title. Now, any other comment? I also want people to comment. In the next, I'm going to showcase the Dimensions platform in the next few minutes. So if somebody has something to add.
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think I have got the explanation clear about the background.
Yeah.
But then there are some people who may insist that in the background of the study you must have to specify or include historical, conceptual, and contextual. I don't know. Can they be said?
No.
Or they can be put in. Yeah.
I say the university dictates what appears inside your proposal. So some universities will tell you that when you are writing our proposal for this department, you need to include this specific heading. So you must follow those ones. The most important thing is what really goes into it. Yes, Mary Oguna, purpose and justification are not really the same. We need to further explore that. Maybe, Mary, you can give your view on this. Please.
You know, when you say they justify,
yeah,
you're justifying why you should spend time. The funder should give you resources, okay? But you know, when you are purposing to study, yes, to purpose is simply, this is what I want to do. So you might be doing something that has no justification, okay? So justification is a heavier term which shows clearly why should we give you our money to do that research? What are the gaps? You understand? The stronger term here and the better term is to justify. Just even if you look at if we go into the English of it, because you can purpose something which has no justification. I'm purposing to go and do a study. You understand? But but that study you're going to do, that research you're going to do, is it justified? Yeah, is it justified? Do we? Can you tell us why we should fund it, and why you should spend your time, and the researcher, or I mean the supervisor, should also spend their time in supervising? So I think we need to really differentiate. I know people use it interchangeably, but there's a big difference between justification and purpose.
Thank you so much, Mary, for that explanation. I'm also guided that the purpose is I'm setting out to do this. This is what I'm setting out to do. But then the justification is whatever you're setting out to do, whatever it is, I'm setting out to conduct this kind of research. That is what your desire is to do. But then you can be doing something that cannot be justified. So there's no justification for you to do what you purpose to do. Is that the summary?
Correct.
Thank you so much for that. As I said, you remember, we said, we are all here to, learn and also relearn and unlearn. So I'm guided that the purpose is just stating what you want to do. So this is my desire. So my desire, for example, is to do ABCD, but then is there a justification to spend money, time, efforts, and all these things on whatever your desire is to do? So, or are we giving you money to go and collect data on something that is not going to help anybody? So that is now the difference between the purpose and the justification. Then in that case, it means therefore that the purpose is not really going to be too wordy. It could be just a few sentences explaining what really you propose, or what your purpose or what your intention is. Then you go ahead now to justify why you need to give me money, you need to spend resources, or as a supervisor, you need to supervise me and guide me through this because it is justifiable in ways A, B, C. Thank you so much for that. I saw somebody is asking about the scope of the study. So the scope of the study just tells us what the study will cover and what it will not really cover. That is where we have so because you cannot, somebody would ask you, let's say you want to talk about, so this scope is defined mostly by the objectives that you have set, and of course, the kind of study you're undertaking. Okay, so it narrates to us what will really be covered within your study, so that we also don't ask a lot of questions that, why did you not do this one? Why did you not do this one? Why did you not collect data of this? It's very clear for us when you tell us the scope of the study, so that we are very sure that you are going to include this kind of people, this is the kind of research you are going to do, or this is the kind of data set, so this is whatever you are trying to, the data you are going to collect is going to be confined within a specific scope, so that we don't ask you questions beyond the scope of what you want to go out there and study. That is why you really need to talk about the scope of the study. Okay. Let me just give an example of what is, so sometimes it depends, and even for scope, especially depending on, like in natural sciences, for example, you can even talk about a geographical scope, because then you will tell us that this will only cover specific areas. It will only target this section of the population, for example, and it will be undertaken within this specific amount of time, so that somebody will not ask you, why did you not do this for 7 years? I'm only seeing data that was done for 2 months. Why is the other data for because you told us that your scope is going to take a given time, given period of time, a given geographical area is going to cover a specific geographical area, and it's going to dwell on specific attributes. So that is what the scope is, just the extent to which your research will be done, so that people don't ask you questions that are outside your scope. And with that, you can easily also say that, hey, in my scope of study, I explained that I was only going to be confined within this. So whatever is outside that is not within the scope. Yes, Alex.
Yeah, thank you very much for that clear explanation. What I wanted to know is when it comes to sampling, whether it is purposive, and sometimes even if it is purposive, the scope of the study may be very wide to the extent that the number of participants or respondents to the study are to be selected using random technique. Now, assuming you are taking a study, you are carrying a study in a region like northern Uganda, and you need to limit the number of participants to 200, yet the people available in the ground are too many. So what I want to know is, are there some software in the computer that can be used to at least do the work, like the referencing softwares? Or because there's some, I can see there's some formulas for calculating, but then some of those formulas are very complex that some people cannot manage. What can you give, or how can you guide us there in that area? Thank you.
Yes, Said Abdi, you want to answer Alex? Or you have a question?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
When you went like to identify the critically research issues, your department or your discipline, and also clarify the justify why are you needed the focus on the elements.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I got the question very clearly. Maybe if you can.
Are you getting me?
Yes, now I can hear you. I think I didn't get it very right the first time. So kindly ask again.
Okay, identify critically research issue, your discipline, and justify why they need an agreement or important intervention of your department to focus on the elements.
Yeah, I think that really has been addressed in the discussions we have had since morning. So identifying the critical issues is just identifying the problem that you really need to address. And I think that can be done, through literature review and whatever is really trending in your field. So you just go and back to your field and ask yourself, what is that thing that is a bit interesting right now? It might not be interesting at the time, but then you can be reading through literature, then you realize, hey, somebody has done a study, or somebody did a study of this, but they did it in using a specific methodology or in a specific area, but then there's still something that still remains that can be done here. So I think just identifying that is just based on literature, but then justification, as you are saying, justifying why you need to do research is why now here is where you need to convince us why somebody is asking, do we have another training tomorrow? This is the first day. Tomorrow will be day 2. So there's another training tomorrow. So the justification is just why you think the research that you have selected, or the problem you have selected is worth studying. Alex asked about proposals, about sampling. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody in the room can guide us if there are tools that can help you in sampling and calculation, because there are formulae that are there that people have been using to calculate the sample size. But then he says you have 2 million people and you only want to bring it down to 200. How then is there a software that can help you calculate the sample size? Anybody can have a go? Maybe somebody can help answer that.
Yes, the statisticians can help you do that, and they have the tools. Okay, I come from the Department of Public Health, Pharmacology, and Toxicology, I'm Dr. Mary Oguna, and I know we have our current chairman, Dr. Joshua Nono, is very good in biostatistics, and sometimes I audit the classes, and I know their tools, so you can reach out. There are even software to help you, so that when you're getting a sample size, that the sample is not too small, so that the results will be declared insignificant, statistically not proper, because the sample size must be adequate. And also, my training is veterinary medicine, so we know when we're dealing with live animals, including human beings, okay, we also do not want to use excess number of animals, because there's the ethics involved. So we just want to use what is called adequate sample size, enough to give us statistically significant results, and not too many, so that we are necessarily bringing suffering to the sample. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary, for that explanation. Alex, I hope you are guided. I think the summary is that you need to talk to statisticians. And I think, well, of course, we all need to know a bit of statistics here and there, but not all of us. There are people who are statisticians, like biostatistics, that is what their major is. So even for us, we could be scratching on the surface. These are people, if you sit down with them and explain to them, hey, this is the kind of study I want to do, this is the kind of data sets I want to collect, this is what, they will advise you very well on how you need to do the sampling. Now, if you are going to do purposive sampling, as you have given an example, you need to justify, because for purposive, it's like we are going to be picking people without giving the other people the chances, like without giving the other part of the population the chances of appearing in that, because you are selectively going to pick them purposively. You need to explain to us what that purpose will be. What are you going to base that sampling on? So I know these ones are other statistical and research things that most of you know already. I'm also not very strong in statistics myself. So TCC also conducts training in statistics and statistical analysis and data management. So I think when that course comes up, one of my colleagues will be able to answer it more appropriately. But I think, as Dr. Mary has already explained, that indeed, if you talk to statisticians, they should be able to provide some guidance on how then can you do this analysis. I want us to get into a session where I'm going to demonstrate to you where a platform where you can get papers to read, information on grant, and also data sets and policy, and also clinical trials. And then it's not like we are ending the discussion. We can still continue the discussion, but I want to demonstrate this so that tomorrow there's also another site I'm going to demonstrate. But today I want to start by demonstrating to you where you can get literature from, because I think throughout the training since morning, we've been talking about the knowledge gap, the research gap, and the statement of the problem. How do you identify where the gap is? Say you can only identify this by reading. If you don't read, it's difficult for you to know what has been done and what is yet to be done. So how then can you read if you're not able to access the information? Now, if you are from any university in Africa, most of these universities will have access to what we call research for life, okay? So if you are from any, yes, Dr. Mary.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I felt it is important, because I saw that thread running through and I've seen it so much, even in my experience with students, even at the university, or even when students are being assigned supervisors. Once you have your supervisors and it's more than one, okay, there's the issue of conflict between the supervisors. One of the participants kept on raising it. So my advice would be, in terms of conflict resolution in quotes, to make your work easier so that you don't jump from one supervisor to another. You've written this and the other one has written that, has told you go and write this. In as much as you can, it's important if you can kindly ask your supervisors that you have joint meetings, so that they lay out the foundation for you, so that you also don't get caught up sometimes when there are such things happening. And then the last point, because I might have to leave, I wanted to bring out very clearly that depending, because my faculty is veterinary medicine, so depending on your institution, the format to follow, you have to look at what your institution requires, okay? And that one, before you start writing so many things, go and check out what do they require so that you don't waste so much time and then just to go back. And that one applies for anything you publish where you're going to submit the publication. Is it a newspaper? Is it a thesis? Is it a journal article? You always check the end user where you're going to take your article to. Get the rules way before so that you don't spend too much time doing things and then you're told to revise. You can be told to revise a whole thesis or even a journal article or even a newspaper article because you didn't follow the format that the place you're taking your article to wanted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary. What a good way of summarizing this. I remember at the beginning, I kept telling you, we don't want you to go back to your universities and tell them that TCC told us that this is the format. Ask the faculty, kindly, I want to start writing my proposal. Like I have come up with a concept. Some universities even will provide you the template for a concept. They will tell you in your concept, this is what appears in the concept. But at the point you want to start writing a proposal, ask the faculty, I want to write now my proposal. Kindly give me guidance on how I should edit this. And this goes as Dr. Mary has already said. Even when you want to publish, you want to send out your paper. Like tomorrow, we'll be talking about publications and manuscript, scientific manuscript publication, writing and publication. Before you send anything out there, or before you write, you really need to be sure that you are writing in a format that is acceptable to the person you are sending this to. So at your university, ask the faculty, or even at the department level, I want to start writing my proposal. I need guidance on how to write it in a way that the university approves. Because you might end up writing a very good proposal and then you are told you need to go and restructure the whole thing. There are some sections that are missing, or you've included sections that are not allowed in your proposal. So those are the things you really want to avoid. So be sure that you are following the format that is laid out by your university or laid out by your institution. As I wanted to demonstrate, we will continue with this conversation, but I just want to demonstrate to you where you can get information from and where you can get papers to read. And as I started explaining, most universities, and I know your university, because most of our African countries are research for life countries. So when you want to access the dimensions that I want to show you, because this is a platform that helps you access papers and many more, as you will see on the platform. So just go on your browser and type Research for Life. When you type Research for Life, this is the first option that comes. Just click on it. Now, if you want to access Research for Life, go to your librarian. Go to your, if you are in a university or in a research institution, go to your library and ask the librarian for Research for Life login details. Each university or each organization has their own unique Research for Life login details. They will provide you with the Research for Life login details. Once they provide you with the Research for Life login details, what you will do is you will log in based on the credentials that they shall have given you. Okay, they will give you login details for Research for Life. Come and log in using those details that they shall have provided. Now, once you log in, let's just see. So each university and each organization in Africa, if they are affiliated to Research for Life, they have their own unique login details or login credentials. So just log into Research for Life based on the credentials that will be given by your university. Once you log in, just after logging into Research for Life, I'll repeat this so that it's easier for you to understand. Go to your librarian. Ask them for the Research for Life credentials for your university or institution. Log in to Research for Life based on those credentials that the librarian has provided. And then after logging in, come under Contents, click on Contents, then go to Databases. So you've logged in, you've clicked under Content, you are now under Contents, then you click on Databases. you will see there's a list of databases that will come. There are several databases. In fact, they are arranged in alphabetical order. Scroll down and then select dimensions. Once you select dimensions, I want you to see what comes so that you can tell me how many publications you can see. Because this is one of those powerful platforms that researchers go to get Sorry, I lost my network power went off, so I lost my network for a few minutes. I have explained to you, sorry, how you get here. So the first step is you ask your librarian to give you their login credentials for Research for Life. Then you log into Research for Life, click under content, go to databases, then go scroll down to dimensions. Now we are on dimensions. Somebody can tell me how many publications you are seeing, how many data sets, how many, maybe just tell me so that I am very sure that we are still here with you.
I think we have lost your screen. You have not, it has removed itself. No.
Sorry. I thought I had shared. I'm sorry here. Oh, it's back here. Let me just share. So is it now visible?
Yes.
It is very visible.
So are you seeing the number of publications that we have here?
Yes, I can see 145,510,999.
Yeah. So imagine these are the publications that are here. So if you want to get publications out of 149 million, 145, like 145.5 million publications, I'm sure you can get something. And you will see that it has more filters, and it's easier now to maneuver through it than if you want to go on other search engines where you just put in keywords and then you get so many. How do you say, so many? I'll just reload this page. I think there is a problem when I lost the power. You go on, there are some certain platforms where you go and then you do a search and you get so many hits and they're not really specific. So you end up finding information that is maybe not relevant to you. But on dimensions, as I will demonstrate, you are able now to use certain filters and get specifically the information that you want. I don't know what is happening, but just give me a minute. I will close this one. Let me just open it again. Let me just see. I don't know what has become, where the problem is here. Let me just log into another, using another platform. I don't know why it's becoming a problem process. So on dimensions, what happens is you can now be able to use certain filters, as I will show you. And those filters will make it very easy for you now to really focus your it's refusing to log in. I don't know what is happening there. I'll try again. If it refuses, then we can do this tomorrow during the next tomorrow's training. I'll just try for the last time. Let me just share so that you see what is happening here. It's easier for you to appreciate what is happening. So it's coming all the way up to here, but then when I try to click on dimensions, it's bringing an error message. So I don't know what is happening. I will try to figure it out so that we can be able to see this even tomorrow. I don't know what has happened to it. I don't know whether the site has a problem or not, because it's refusing to log in. Okay, let me now try again here. Finally, are you able to see my screen on dimensions now?
Yes, you can see.
Thank you. So on this platform, as you can see, we have publications, we have data sets, we have grants, we have patents, we have clinical trials, and also we have policy documents. Now, all these you can only access if you access dimensions through the Research for Life platform. If you don't access it through Research for Life and you just Google dimensions AI, you can only be able to access publications and data sets. This other information will not be accessible to you. So that's why I'm encouraging you to go to your librarians, ask them for Research for Life credentials for your specific university, because that will allow you to access all this that I want to demonstrate here. So when you arrive on this, when you get to this platform, this is of course the landing page. On the left, there are several filters, and I want us to start with the first one. So publication here. Let us say your supervisor tells you that I only want papers that were published between 2020 to 2024. So just click on the circle just in front of the year, and then you click on limit. So we are limiting our search to publications that were published between these years. Now, you see, we are down from 145 million to 31 million. Okay? So we are down from 145 million to 31 million papers. Okay? Now, that is the first filter. But then I also want to show you, I just want to clear this and then show you something here. I'll clear this. And then I want to show you how far back you can go in terms of publication years. Let us say you want to do like a meta-analysis, or imagine you can go back to 1665. So there's information far back as 1665 on this platform, 1762, 1856. So all this information is there. So if you want to get something in your field that was done in the year 1793, or something that was in 1821 or 1824 or 1901 or 1926, all that is here. So that is why one of the reasons why this is a platform that has, incredible, it is of high importance for researchers and students and scholars. Now, that is the first thing. So we've talked about the first filter is about publication year. You can also filter by country. Let me just come to country first before we go to research. So let us say you want only papers that are from the country of, I'll choose a country at random. Uganda, for example. Just come and type Uganda, and then you click on limit to Uganda. So we are going to find papers that are from Uganda, or those that are related, or those that are relevant to the country of Uganda. You see, we have 41,000 papers that are relevant to the country of Uganda. And then with that, we can easily come here and look and click under research organization and see from Uganda, which are the research organizations that are contributing to these publications. You see, Makerere University has 20,000. Then we have Mbarara, Uganda Virus Research Institute, London School of Health. All this. Some of these universities might not be in Uganda, but the universities we are seeing here have worked together with the researchers from Uganda. That is why the publications are, they're also appearing under that. So you can see the contributions. And then you want to see from Uganda who is the most, so there's this researcher called Moses Robert Kamya. Then we have Janet A. Sele. So this is, the order in which they contribute to publication. So how many papers have come from them that are present on this platform? So under researcher, you can easily, if there's a researcher whose work you want to read, you can easily just come here and search and limit your work to that researcher, and then that is what you are going to get. Okay. Then you want to look at under research categories. So maybe field of research. I want to look for papers that were published in the field of public health, clinical sciences, and health sciences, for example. And then you click limit. So the papers you are going to get are in those fields: public health, clinical sciences, and health sciences. So we have 19,000 papers that are from Uganda and are in those specific fields of research. Okay. Apart from that, there are people who have been asking, how do I identify a journal where to publish my paper? I already have a paper, I want to publish it, but I don't know how to approach that tricky part, because people also have been telling me that if I'm not careful, I can end up falling prey to predatory publishing. So predatory publishing is where you are publishing in journals that are not really practicing the standard procedures that are required in scientific publication. So how can you avoid that? You can easily come here and check under source article. Then you see where researchers in Uganda are publishing. So researchers in Uganda are publishing in Research Square, +1, BMC Public Health, the Lancet, African Health Sciences. So these are where these researchers are publishing. And because they are publishing there, it means these are not predatory journals. So you can easily also pick one of those journals and publish in them. So that is one of the ways in which you can easily also identify journals where you can publish based on this platform. Then let's say you want to look for information that is open access. You can easily just click on open access and then select the open access papers that you want. If you want all open access, just click on that and then you limit to. It means that now we are going to get papers that are from Uganda in these fields of research, and they are open access. We have 15,000 of them. Okay. Now that is just how to play around with those filters. Now, after doing the filter, maybe you could have done all those filters, but you still cannot find the paper you want. So what do? You can come and click here and then put the keywords. After applying your filters, you can come and just put in keywords, and then it will refine it because it's now going to focus mostly on what is required. Okay. See? So you can now check and see which paper you want. Now, let us say this is the paper we have identified. Okay, this is the paper you have identified. Just come down here. The first thing is get PDF. You can easily download the PDF directly. But then you can summarize. I hope you can see this. You can summarize. When you click on summarize, it gives you a summary of that paper, even without reading the whole paper. You see? This study examines the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on food insecurity among people living with HIV in Uganda. Results show a significant increase in food insecurity and reduced access to nutritious food due to employment loss and deteriorating support systems. Despite this, respondents continue to take HIV medication. Strategies to ensure food security for people living with HIV should be prioritized. You see, you have just had a summary of this paper before you even dig deep into reading it. Okay, so the paper that we have identified, you can be able to, and also the citations are also here. You can easily see the citations, the total number of, so that is for all the papers that are here. Now, let us say we are singling out this paper. Then you just click on that paper you are singling out, and then when it loads the next page, you will see what will happen there. When it loads this page, you get to see that if you click on this arrow, it takes you directly to where the journal, where to the website where the journal website where this the website of the journal where this was published, and you can download and read it there when you click on this arrow. But of course, there are other. The summary is also here, no problem. The abstract, all those things. But then through that paper, you find all the other papers that have been cited in that paper, and they have active links, so you can easily access them. So by getting one good paper, you can now be linked to other papers. So in literature search, that is what we call snowballing. So you get one paper, it moves you to another paper like that. So you don't have to always go back and again do another search all the time. Just through that one paper that we selected, you can access all the papers that they have cited. See, all of them, there are 32 papers. When you click on more, it's going to show you all the papers that were cited there. You see? So you can easily follow them and see, okay, I am looking at this. I think this one looks good for me. I also need to look at that paper. I also need to look at that. So you can easily now be following them and downloading them, and because they are cited in the paper that you are reading. So that is how it can, that is how Dimensions can help you get papers to read. But then Dimension goes one step further to also show you how you can, if there are grants that are currently running in your field or in your country, for example. So grants mostly, grants are research projects. So there are research projects that are ongoing in your country. That one can be, and also data sets. Of course, data sets, you all know, these are maybe somebody collected data, and then they were not able to use all of it. So they said, I can archive this one here, so somebody can analyze and use it to write their thesis, but then they will cite me. I'm seeing Paris Musitia. You have a question or a comment before we proceed?
Oh, yeah, I want to take you back a little bit on the key search terms. I'm trying to type the key search terms and they're not activated. Could you just go back and try to type a search term without necessarily using the limits on the platform?
Yeah, when you click on this, it gives you a place to type.
Yes, when I type,
So let's say you have specified the years as an example. So let's say you have specified this years as an example, and maybe other filters. You have applied so many other filters, and now they're appearing here, up here, right? Like they're appearing right now.
Yeah.
When you just click on this space, it allows you to type.
Yeah, could you type and what search? Yeah, I have been able to type, but it's not activating to search.
Like which one? Maybe. Just as an example, and then you just type. I think this is not right. After that, you just hit the enter button on your computer. When you hit the enter button on your computer, it will search for you.
Okay.
Yes.
Then I'm able to export. Are you able to export the database? For example, if I do I refine my search and I get the paper that I want, when I export the entire database, maybe we could talk about that then in the grants. Yeah.
An entire database. Let's say this is the paper you want.
No, let me say I want the list. I want the 20 papers that have come out of my, because I've refined my search, and the papers that are coming out, I've used search terms, and the papers are relevant. So I want to get access to all those papers without necessarily doing it one by one. That's what I'm asking. Can I get my data set after a search?
That is not possible with this. For this one, you will have to export them one by one.
Okay.
So when you can export citation in RIS or BibTeX, and then you take it the other side. But there's other platforms where you can select, click, and then you export once. But here you will have to deal with them one at a time. Okay, now the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the grants. So let us say that you have put certain criteria. So let's say you are from the country of, I'm now using a different country. Which country is represented here? Uganda is here. Ethiopia, Somalia. Which country do we use?
Somalia.
Somalia. So I've just typed the word Somalia, so I'm limiting my search to Somalia. And I want to talk about, I'm not going to talk about data sets and stuff. I'm going to talk about grants. Now, if grants, these are project proposals or projects that are currently running in Somalia. So when you type the country, you can easily click on grants, and then you will see the project. This one is running between 2024 and 2026. This was 2023 to 2025. These ones are still active, 2025, 2025, 2026, 2024. So these are some of the projects that are active. But then you can also look at the organizations where these projects are run. So you see Somali National University has 13 grants, University of Hargeisa, then there's University of Nairobi, University of Addis Ababa University. Now, University of Nairobi and maybe other universities are appearing here. They might not be necessarily in Ethiopia, in Somalia, but it means that they are collaborators in those projects that those grants that are currently running in Ethiopia. That is why, in Somalia, sorry. That is why their names are appearing here. So once you do the search, then you can easily now come down also here and look at under research categories. You want to see the research projects that are currently running in your field of research. So let's say you are in the field of health sciences, for example, and maybe clinical sciences, or biomedical and clinical. So you can click on those and then say, I don't want information about all grants. I just want information on those grants that are specific to those specific fields. Then you're down to 10 grants. So the good thing is, if this is, let's say this is a program, you are from Somalia, for example. And this one is a project that really is interesting to you. You can click on it and then you find more information because you will find all the now this is the PI, this is the principal investigator. And then these are the other co-PIs. And then we want to see which universities are participating. So we have Ahmad University in Somalia is the university that is participating. Then these are other universities that are also participating. Okay, and research institutions. So universities and other institutions that are also participating. It also gives you a summary of this project so that you know what it is about. Okay, so under grants, that is how you can use this now to be able to get people to network with, people to work with, because then you know who is working on what research. The other thing that also can show you under grants is where you can also check and see who is funding the funder, who is funding work in Somalia, Medical Research Council, World Health Organization. So this also gives you an idea of which organizations are funding grants or funding research or funding projects in Somalia. So when you click on funder, all that will come up, and then you are able to find all these things. So that is how you can use dimensions now with regard to publications and also with regard to grants. Now, the others about patents, clinical trials. If you want to see the kind of clinical trials that are currently running in your country, just click on clinical trials, and then you will see the clinical trials that are trending in your country, and then you can decide, whether you want to see who is funding them, or the collaborating institutions, the fields of research, the phase of the clinical trial, the year, the status. All these are there. You can also do that with datasets. So you can say, I want to do a certain kind of study, but I really don't want to go out there. I really want to just check and see if there is somebody who had put some data sets on the repository so that I can be able to analyze them, use them to inform my study, and then I can be able to cite them. So just go and play around with this site. You'll find how useful it is for you and how informative this site will be in terms of getting to get your publications right, and also getting to also understand what is happening in your field of research in terms of grants and also projects. I will stop this here and then now leave it for our general plenary session where we can discuss and give some feedback before we finish. Yes, so somebody is asking, Hilary is asking, I have opened dimensions, but the filter section is missing countries to territory. That is because you did not access it through Research for Life. You can still access dimensions through just by Googling it. But then, as I say, the functionalities will be limited. So the only way, the best way is, the only way is for you to be able to access it through Research for Life. Okay, can one access dimensions if the university is not registered? Most universities in Kenya, I stand guided, are under Research for Life. I know they're affiliated to Research for Life. If you go to the librarian, they will just give you the Research for Life login details, and then you should be able to access dimensions through that. So Hilary Rotich, your answer is when you access dimensions just by Googling, then there are certain filters that you will not be able to get. And you will also find that certain tabs like the one on clinical trials, patents, and also policy documents, those ones are inactive. You can only access publications and data sets, but then the filters are also limited. So you need to access dimensions. For you to be able to experience its full power, you should be able to access dimensions through Research for Life. Now I am here at a place where we have discussed a lot since 8:30, I think. We've been sitting for more than 3 hours. It's at a point where we now need to go have our final discussions before we stop for the day so that people can also maybe move on to do other things, and then we meet again tomorrow. So any questions that are remaining, any final thoughts, and any comments here? Anybody? Final remarks? Yes. Any final remarks, any question, any clarification, any addition, or anything from anybody? Just could be anything. We've discussed so many things today. So it's also time to go back and reflect. And it's also time to go back and look at your proposals again and look at if there is anywhere. Yes, Grace, thank you for that. That's also, it's encouraging for us also to know that this session was educative and this session picked something out of this session. So I've also learned today the actual difference between purpose of study and the justification. So you can purpose to do something, but it's not something that is justifiable. So, I'm also, I also saying about my take-home message that the purpose is just, this is what my desire is to do. But then is your desire justifiable in terms of spending money, putting efforts, and putting all these resources into it? So that is now what brings about the difference between purpose and justification. For a long time, and even among scholars, I remember Dr. Mary was also saying that people try to use it interchangeably, but necessarily it might not be that. So that is one thing that I've learned from today's session, and I'm really grateful that I was able to get that, because when it comes up, I will now have very strong point to tell people that, hey, you are not looking at these things the same way. The purpose is what your desire is, what you purpose to do. The justification is whether whatever you purpose to do is justifiable, or it is just some random thought that might not really warrant the kind of resources that are required to do it. Okay? Do research institutions like Calro have logins for Research for Life? I really think they do. Just kindly ask. Most research institutions in Kenya have login details for Research for Life. I highly suspect they have. Kindly just find out. Yes, thank you for the session. This was an eye-opener. Yeah, I'm happy that, you found this useful, and I also learned today so many things. Somebody also gave the different kinds of scope. So somebody talked about statistical scope, the geographical scope, and also the content scope. These are things I learned. I can't say that I have been in this field long enough to know everything. I learn all the time, and that's why I always tell you, contribute, because I'm also here to learn. If you don't contribute and you just keep quiet, then I'm not learning anything. But when people talk and people give their ideas, then I also learn in the process. Then it helps me also when I'm trying to help other people and guide them. Because now if somebody asks me some of these, if I learned them from elsewhere, I can easily say, okay, this one time I was doing a training, somebody explained this and I got to pick that up. So thank you for finding time. If we have any final, you are welcome. Boniface is saying knowledge is nice when shared. Thank you so much for planning out such forums. Yes, I think also the more you also, even for you, the more you train other people, the more you show other people how to do some of these things, the more you also get to master it. If you have very valuable information and you just sit on it and say, okay, I want to keep it to myself, then it rusts because it's not going to be replenished. It's only replenished when you teach people and then they ask you questions. Then you get to also go back and check through those questions, and so then you get to learn more. So that is how your information or your research or your knowledge gets replenished. So it can only be replenished if you share it. Otherwise, you stay with it, it becomes a cake or it becomes rusted, and you think you know, but you don't know anything. Things have moved. So that's why it's good to share. I've seen, let me just read through. I've seen, thank you very much for the incisive presentation. Thank you, Dr. Mary. Thank you, Dr. Mary. It's a pleasure sometimes to find that people who have doctorates, people who are already guiding students, people who are members of faculties are still attending such programs, trainings on proposal writing, trainings on scientific writing. You would ask yourself, this is somebody who has been publishing for a long time. This is somebody who has been guiding other people. Why are they here? Why are they attending some of these sessions? And saying that they find it that also shows me that it's not like you know all these things. You might end up picking a tip or two from somebody, and that's important for us. So thank you so much, Dr. Mary, again, for also just finding time to join, and also for the contributions given. It has actually enriched what we have here, and I've learned something today. So if there are no further questions, I will allow my colleagues from, actually I'm conducting this training from a place called Kisumu. It's in the shores of Lake Victoria. So it's in the western part of Kenya. Some beautiful weather here. So my colleagues are in Nairobi, the capital city. So I will give them the chance if any of them has maybe some final comments, because we are meeting tomorrow, and tomorrow we are now going to talk about how do you prepare a manuscript, a scientific manuscript or a scientific article for publication. How do you write an article and then you finally get to publish it so that you have papers that are published under your name out there. So that will be the training for tomorrow. So don't miss. If you miss tomorrow, then you shall have missed a lot. Then tomorrow I'm also demonstrating a tool that is called Scholastic that helps you that helps you also get to read papers, summarize them, contextualize them. So you also don't want to miss out on that tool tomorrow. So set a date. Yes, Alex is saying, thank you so much for this comprehensive guidance. It has got a place in my research journey. I'm really happy that we are going to be part of that journey. And if we make it easier, it's never easy. I know PhD or master's is not like you walk in and walk out. Challenges are there. Part of it is what we'll talk about tomorrow, rejections. Your proposal can be rejected. Your manuscript can be rejected. Anything can be rejected, even your thesis. So just be strong. And, if we can, that is why we have these sessions where we try to help one another through this journey so that we don't feel like we're walking alone. We have our WhatsApp platforms where maybe tomorrow you will be guided on how to join, because there, if you have these quick questions, you can easily ask, and then you can easily be asked, and then we can provide the people on that platform, and some of our colleagues can be able to provide answers when they can. So I will allow the TCC team, not the one in Kisumu, okay, I'm in Kisumu, the TCC team in Nairobi to give maybe certain guidance for tomorrow, and then we can close this session, because I'm seeing people are now, maybe the questions are not there, but people are just appreciating. So over back to you in Nairobi.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, from the shores of Lake Victoria. And thank you as well for the insights that you've shared with the participants during this training. To the participants, thank you so much for your time and participation. We will see you tomorrow for day 2, same time as today. Nicholas has already given us a preview of what's going to come tomorrow. So I look forward to the session. The recordings will be shared tomorrow, as well as the slides, presentations, and the notes. Thank you so much, everyone. I've also shared the link to our WhatsApp group in the chat. And before I won't leave, I'll just leave 1 minute for anyone who wants to copy any resources from the chat to do so, then end this meeting. Thank you so much, and goodbye.